Hi, Barbarian here. Are you a game master looking for an amazing game world rich in lore and strange new creatures to run your D&D or Pathfinder 2 game in? Well, look no further than the world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles. The world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles contains everything you need to set sail for adventure. Except maybe a boat. You're probably gonna have to buy your own boat. But the book itself contains a detailed overview of key locations on the Indigo Isles, dozens of story hooks and NPCs, and details on the ancient spiritual religion known as the Eld. Wow, that sounds spooky. Don't forget to take your weapons with you. You'll also get 15 new dragons as monsters, featuring the entire family of wild dragons from the Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons book to help you murderize your players' precious characters. And you'll get gobs of new magic items to make them feel like they might have a chance. But they won't, will they? What's more, there are tons of new character options, 10 new ancestries, 10, and new archetypes and subclasses and heritages, and seven familiars native to the Indigo Isles. Remember, the world of Battlezoo Indigo Isles comes in 2 versions, one for D&D 5e and another for Pathfinder 2. Oh yeah, and they're releasing the PDF right after the Kickstarter ends. If you'd like a new fantastical world to amaze your players with, click the link below and back the Kickstarter today.
See, look at that. Now we're live. Hey! We're live. And we have Bob, World Builder, building worlds. Do you actually build worlds, or do you ever destroy worlds, or do you just build them?
I have not destroyed a home campaign world. I mean, or a published world yet. Just made a bunch.
Oh, you're still Bob, World Builder, not Bob, World Destroyer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know how much you've followed like other things that I do, but whenever Grace is involved, my wife, she goes by Grace World Destroyer. Now I can say that, you know, even from behind the scenes, I don't think she's destroyed any worlds in her games either, but that's just the balance that we have set up. So
I've only destroyed a few worlds before in my games, but you know what, at least one of those worlds had it coming.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, gotta have a
it
good
was
reason.
just a very bad world, and demons and devils had a lot of influence there, and so the half angel big bad evil person destroyed it to reincarnate people into a world that was less bad.
By the way, we were talking about you and your wife on yesterday's stream because you're going to the Pittsburgh convention. You and your wife. I saw that.
Yeah.
And so is Baron. And I was like, oh, wait.
Oh, yeah.
I love
I didn't even know he was going. Yeah,
he's above you on the list. He's right at the top. I was like, and then there was you and your wife. I was like, oh, and I was like, you haven't been to a convention, or have you been to a convention now?
Is it alphabetical,
yeah,
Steven?
So we have now.
Could be.
We went to Too Many Games.
Oh, you did go
Philly.
to that. Yeah, you did go to that.
I think actually, I think the last time I was on with you guys, I mentioned that because I remember you even saying like, oh yeah, Too Many Games, that's like a more of a video game thing. And at the time I was like, oh yeah, but the guy told me like there's more tabletop stuff now. But then, you know, I haven't talked to you since I actually went to this thing. It was like 85% Nintendo, like vintage Nintendo stuff.
I know.
And then like a tiny quarter
of
tabletop.
I know what I'm talking about.
He knows what he's talking about.
I know, because I know that very well, that convention, and it is it's a retro game convention, a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the better ones, but I'm like, there's no tabletop role-playing games at that convention.
There's a tiny amount of tabletop stuff happening, and it was funny because I was there. If you know Baron, you might be familiar with Runehammer as well. Hanker Infernale, like he went and we did a panel together, he and I and Grace, and we were like, is anybody going to show up to our panel? Because we knew that 90% of people here are not here to talk about D&D or anything. But fortunately, they had it organized well such that everything tabletop, like all the tabletop panels, were at the same stage, like continuously. So So there was still a good audience for it. So it was fun.
I might go to the Pittsburgh one. I lived in Pittsburgh for 5 years, so I know Pittsburgh
cool.
very well, and I still go back every year. So, and I know it's in the Monroeville area. I know exactly where it is. So,
You probably know way more about it than I do. Then,
I know. I lived there for 5 years. I know a lot about it. That's why I'm like,
well, but the city, surely, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, but even
convention too,
right. But they have a lot of. They have
yeah.
really good conventions there and really good attendance because they have Carnegie Mellon's there, Pitt. There's a ton of colleges there, so it's a really well attended. And to be honest, it's
cool.
pretty geeky. There's a huge geek element. That's where I got into Magic the Gathering was in Pittsburgh.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like when back in Alpha Beta when no one else had it. They had cards and yeah, they have a very strong gaming community there. So I was like, maybe I'll go. Maybe I'll go and hang out, and if your guys are there and I can show you around Pittsburgh, and if I can be a guest, maybe I'll see if I can get a guest and all my friends live there. So
well, yeah, and one of the things they reached out to me is probably like 2 or 3 months ago, like asking if I was interested in this. And I had already said yes to the Philly one, and they're offering like, yeah, we'll put you in a like little hotel, whatever. So I was like, I got no reason to say no. This sounds great. But part of it is, of course, like being on like a panel of some sort. And at the time they were like, oh, like, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out later. And now we still haven't like I just realized recently, I was thinking about this, like they still haven't like told me what's going on with that yet. So maybe I should talk to Baron, and if you're interested, we could like do something together. I think that'd be really cool.
Sure.
It's easier when it's just like a conversation, kind of like what we're doing now, instead of like, oh yes, I will lecture on this topic for like.
I could talk about anything. So yeah, it should be a pretty good convention. They have a huge range of people. And I always like any excuse to go to Pittsburgh. It's so easy to get to. So, you are a little fuzzy. Oh, now you stabilized. But so you will be able to hear Bob. I don't know if you'll get to see him, but you'll get to hear him. So,
okay. If on the off chance that I need to turn off my video, will that mess up the stream or anything? Should I not do that?
Don't do that.
Okay.
Don't do that. I mean, maybe I can get a picture of you, like.
I hear sometimes that helps, but I don't know.
Well, that's kind of the whole point. You want to see you. No, you're okay now. True. It's going back and forth.
Okay.
And
yeah, it's going in and out.
It's going in and out. Yeah,
should be okay.
Fine.
Cool.
So we were all at Gen Con having the time of our lives, meeting every streamer known to mankind. And everyone's like, "Where's Bob? Where's Bob?" We're like, Bob couldn't make it.
Yeah.
Bob and I are in the club of the people that everybody asked about that weren't there.
That's right. Well,
okay, great. Yeah, I assumed you were there too, Mark.
Nope.
Because it really seemed like everybody was there. Like I was seeing tweets and YouTube community posts and just every post imaginable from everybody I follow was at Gen Con. So
now that we're at Gen Con, we're at the same party because Dungeon Dudes had a party on Thursday and invited everyone, and everyone was there. It was crazy.
That's cool.
It was fun. Don't worry, they'll do it again next year. It was a fun con because there was a lot of people who've never been there before, and so they were all just like, "Wow!"
Right? Yeah, yeah. That's how it seems. So it probably would have still been a good one to try to get to because it seemed like the reuniting of like all these people in a way. I don't know how popular it was last year. I know like things were fairly back to normal last year, but I don't know if Gen Con was. But it really seemed like this year it was as huge as ever, and yeah, everybody was at it.
Yeah, it was. Well, Professor Dungeon Master said it was the best one he's ever been to yesterday on the stream, and I don't know if it's the best one because I've had some pretty crazy ones, but it was up there. It was one of the most fun ones in terms of.
Well, now he's got to wait till next year when I'll be there.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, now you'll have because everyone will be there again. Like Baron will be. Well, we hung out with Kelsey. A lot.
Kelsey Dion,
and she hasn't been there in like 20 years, and so she was worried because she was like, I don't know if I'm gonna know anyone, and then she just like hung out with us the whole time. She's like, oh my god, we had so much fun. We're playing games, and she's like, oh, this is great. It's okay. It's just much more fun if you know people. You know, it's like that's what you end up having a little posse. Well, I want to see. I'd see
Yeah.
who got the most recognizable, because we'd walk around the hall and it was like I'd get a few, Baron would get a few, Questing Beast would get a few, and then Kelsey got a fair number, but
yeah.
Professor Dungeon Master, oh man, he destroyed all of it.
Was he the celebrity?
He destroyed all of us combined. The only one I've seen,
Well, that's awesome.
the only person I've seen get more mobbed is Ginny D.
Yeah,
by
I
a
would say
wide.
her or probably the dungeon dudes, maybe, but
No.
especially because there's two of them, they can divide and
No,
conquer, right?
every 5 minutes, within 5 minutes, someone would stop us to say hi to him. It was
Wow.
endless, and we're like, oh my god. And then it was fun. I was like, well, got to step up our game. We're all looking around, we're all standing and looking at each other going, yeah, we got to step up our game here. It's like everyone recognizes Professor Dungeon Master.
That's funny.
It was very funny.
Hasn't he gone like every year for the last 20 plus years?
Well, that's not the reason.
He probably just
Yeah,
No,
but
no,
like, you
it's
don't
from the
meet
commi-
enough
no.
people at Gen Con to get a lot of recognition from that.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. You know, he has been going forever. He's been going every year since like the 80s. So he's going forever. But he's only started his channel like 3 years ago. And it's just he is a popular channel. He also has a very unique look. Like you recognize him right away.
That's what I was gonna say too. Like, because especially when you mentioned like Ginny. Now I know she doesn't have like the straight up like neon blue hair anymore, but or at least I don't know. Maybe
you
she
recognize
did at
her
Gen Con,
immediately.
but
at
least in more recent videos she doesn't. But yeah, because when I said the dungeon dudes, I was like, well, you know, they kind of just look like
they
every
look like
other guy
dudes.
at Gen
Yeah,
Con,
that's the
probably.
thing. They look similar.
Yeah. I look like any because
So-
people would
so
come
yeah,
up to me and like,
Professor stands out.
they'd actually ask if I was steaming liquor. I'm like, yes. So like that's when you know. But then you see him and he's like, he's wearing his jacket. He's got the whole makeup, thing on. Yeah. So
Yeah.
But
Well,
you
this is a question: was Baron wearing his suit or not?
no, it's way too hot.
So yeah, he's almost unrecognizable. With that. It's like Superman, you know. It's like,
yeah,
but the reverse Superman. Because
Yeah.
with him, he's got to be in his suit and glasses to be recognized. And
I
if he's not
wear
wearing his- if he's wearing a t-shirt, contacts. It's like,
let's
who is
see. I'm trying to think. Everyone else. Everyone was there. It was fun. Well, if you go to PAX, we're all going to be at PAX too. And I know PAX is very close to you and me, obviously. So
that?
PAX
Now,
Unplugged.
last I checked, it was a couple months ago, probably. Are tickets now available
Yes,
for PAX?
yes. I just got my hotel room and my
Okay,
tickets
then I will get
last
on that
night.
super soon. I'm gonna write that down right now.
Yeah, we're all going.
Because last I checked, people were talking about it. We were talking about PAX Unplugged, right? December in
Yes.
Philly.
December 1st. Yep.
Okay, yeah. Last I had talked to people about it. Grace and I looked at the tickets, and it didn't have a date set, and like there weren't tickets yet, but that was a little while ago. So yeah.
Yeah, PAX
on that.
Unplugged is a lot of fun. The best thing is it's 90% board games, but it's very well set up, and you can play role playing games. I mean, we played a game every night. We played Mothership one night, and then we played Cobalt Take My Baby one night with the guy who wrote it, which was fun. So we always played something. It was always something to play. So either someone will run something, like on the spot, or you just play some board games. But it was pretty easy to pick up a game, because then Kelsey's like, I'll run a game. I'm like, I'll run. Everyone's like, but half the people here have their own role playing games. They could just run their own, and then Mark could run Pathfinder.
Well, and I know I would say if you're hanging with Baron too, a lot of Baron's attitude, it's like, I want to run as many games as possible, like all the time. At least that's how he was. Like the one time I got to hang out with him.
Well,
I
bugged him to playing Mothership, because I said I wanted to try it, and everyone at the table was like, none of us tried it. He's like, oh my god, we got to run it for you, and then he did, and then he got really, really drunk. But he still ran it for like 8 people, super drunk. And so I was like, wow, that's impressive. So, and like everyone's sitting here going, why are you guys just talking about stuff? And we're like, I don't know, because I haven't spoken to you in a few months. But
yeah, we got to catch up a
catching
little.
up.
Time to
You
talk
get
about
to see-
Daggerheart now.
Now we could talk about.
Yeah, I mean Daggerheart, which was
Daggerheart.
announced. Not announced, but which was previewed at Gen Con, which we were talking about.
The
So it's
perfect
connected.
segment.
It's connected.
Yes. Well,
Yes,
they
this is all
announced
just the
it.
build up.
It was a build-up. They announced it a couple of months ago, but and Bob just put out a video where the announcement was like, "We're coming out with a game," and that was it. That was the announcement. And then they actually were showing it off at Gen Con, but it's still in the. They're showing it, but you can't really play it. It's still in the very previewy state where it's very nebulous how it works exactly. But
there's details that have come out that are detailed enough to get a decent sense of how some systems and mechanics work, but it's not enough to know how everything works together.
Yeah. My biggest concern is, and you seem to like this, Bob, but man, 2d12 versus a 1d20, and I'm not going to say 2d12, I'm saying 2d anything. Because when you have a bell curve versus a flat, curve, the math gets wonky, and I don't even know how you design for that. I mean, Mark, you're the designer; you know better than me.
It's not too bad. The way you design for that. Well, so first of all, 2d12 is actually much swingier than you may think. For
wait, Bob, let's say something. Wait, before you get into your diatribe, what are you gonna say, Bob?
Well, I think that was going to be my comment too, because it was my one comment on it in the video is like, yeah, I do love 1d20, and that's still like kind of a favorite, of course, because I do love the swinginess and the unexpectedness. I think our other stream was literally about randomness, but the nature of like the 2D whatever, like a lot of like the most popular that I'm familiar with somewhat is by the Apocalypse 2d6. Like it's a way more limited range, so it's a much more extreme curve where it's like you're really landing in the middle like far more often than on the ends. But with 2d12 it's still such a wide range from 2 to 24, whereas it's just not nearly as extreme. So it's like it's still angled toward those middle numbers, of course, but I think I don't know, I think it like lends enough predictability if you're into that kind of design. I basically just think it's a great middle ground between what we might normally see with 2D whatever systems and what we might normally see with a 1D20 kind of system. So that's what I was going to say. But
I agree with Bob that 2D12 is swingier than you think. It is always true that adding more dice pushes it into being a bell curve of some kind, and it's not uniformly distributed. That being said, I've played other games before where you need to roll 2d12. They weren't necessarily like the main role-playing mechanic, and they are very swingy and unreliable, just not as much as 1d20 where who knows where it's going to go. And as a designer, you absolutely can design around a bell curve. In fact, it allows you to do some pretty interesting things when you have enough dice that are being used together to sort of determine your success or failure. Then you can kind of have more confidence that the values are going to go within a certain range. And so therefore you can make it so that some pretty drastic stuff happens if the values get outside of that range without worrying about, that drastic thing actually happens 5% of the time. And you may be like, I do not want this to happen 5% of the time. But with 2d12, if rolling double 12s happens 1 in 144. So if you put something really extreme in that, or double ones, that's just like way too extreme for a D20 system, you can. So it actually gives you a lot of freedom in certain ways to use those kind of systems.
Yeah. Right. I feel like we must have talked about this in our previous stream, so I don't want to dwell on it, but like with random tables, that's why I do like a bell curve, because I don't feel that bad putting some crazy result high on the table or whatever, where it's like, okay, this might kill the party, but it's super unlikely that it's going to happen. So it's like you can play a little around more with those extremes.
I don't know. I'm the type of person. I have countless stories of roll a 1d100, and if you get a 100, something happens, and then we roll it. And I have a a lot of those stories. Like,
I can.
like way more than you should.
Yeah, I know. At least like 5 of them are about a volcano where it was like
That's
grabbing
one
an
of
edge
them.
before falling into the volcano.
That is one of them. But the other one also is that this one's even rarer. Is that we had the Numerian fluid from Iron Gods, and he drank it, and it's this fluid. It's like basically motor oil. And I looked up the table. I forgot what table I looked up, but there's a table you
there's
look
a
up.
table for it, and they're mostly bad, but there's
Well,
a few that
then
are
there's
really good.
Well, Jason rolled 100, and we're like, oh come on! And so we had to look it up, and there's a sub table. And then on the sub table,
That's when you know it's getting serious.
Yeah, you're like, oh boy, now we're in real trouble. And the sub table, you roll a 1d10, and if you roll a 1, you're a god. You actually become invincible. And like one of them's like you grow wings, like they're all amazing. But he actually rolled perhaps the best one of all. He rolled a 2, so it wasn't god, but it was one right below god. Is he became a mutant, and if you become a mutant in Pathfinder First Edition, you get 2 of your stats. You get a +6 on immediately. A +6. I know. But then one of your stats goes to like -2 or -4. I forgot how it worked, but so it was like, oh my god! And he suddenly had like a 24 strength and like a 24 con, and he's like, he actually became Bane from Batman, and because Bane's a mutant. I was like, he literally became Bane, and he basically gained a level by drinking that thing, and we figured out it was a 1
That's
in
what I say. It reminds me of like Deck of Many Things kind of results.
Yeah.
Where you can get,
Where it was a 1 in
like
10,000 chance. And of getting, and that was probably the best thing to get, and he got it.
I wonder if anyone who has our Battle Zoo Otherworlders book has actually gotten a SS ranked cheat for their reincarnated character, because that requires you to roll a 100 and then a 100 and then a 100 again.
Oh my
which
god!
Is like it's a little bit harder than that.
Like
it's
1 in like a million or something.
Yeah, it's like 1 in a million. If you actually want to get it, but then that gives you powers that you're just like you instantly win. Or the one about knowledge is like all of the facts in the entire book, campaign book. In fact, the GM just gives you
I read that. I remember laying that out. It's like the GM just gives you the book. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, well, honestly, that was the weakest one because a lot of the other ones just kill everyone who ever tries to be hostile to you before they can do anything or something like that. So, but it's really unlikely.
So wait,
so
we
there
had
were a few super chats.
Yes, one from Dire Den, very first super chat ever. He must be here for you because it's for you, Bob. You wrote, Bob, I loved your video on game balance. I even recorded a response video. Do you think Daggerheart's D12 system and greater narrative focus will reduce balance issues at least better than 5e?
Yeah, I saw that question, and it really depends on the group, because my whole balance video was the idea of players balancing the game. And so this is why early on in the video, I even say that it's like, some people would just call this like not even game balance, because it doesn't have to do with like the mechanical design. It's literally just players either having enough experience or enough common sense sometimes, like going into certain situations about like what they have a chance to succeed on and what they don't, and how they can choose, like specifically from a combat perspective, of like how they're going to approach it. Whereas a lot of things in 5e are traditionally you're expected to fight the thing all the way to 0 hit points and you're going to win every time. So the idea of like, well, you can be a lot more creative with your encounters if you just change that expectation to be like, well, the thing's probably going to run halfway through, or maybe the players shouldn't face it at all, because it just, you're signaling to them as the GM that it's way more powerful. So back to the question, I think Daggerheart's system, it does seem like they're trying to incorporate more, player building on the narrative than is expected in D&D typically. And if that's the case, then it really does just depend on the group still, because if the players have that experience or that common sense and can build the world in a truly collaborative way, it's going to be great. But if you're in a group where you have players who really either don't know what they're doing or really know what they're doing and really want to take advantage of every situation, it's not going to be the right system for you. But yeah.
then we
I think
have
that's a good answer, which is sort of just like when you're talking about the players that want to just go in and take advantage of every situation, sometimes bouncing off of narrative systems. In a way, that means that like players who would be like, does this narrative system have fewer balance issues than 5e or Pathfinder 2 or some very rules heavy system? Likely are not the ones that the narrative system is more targeted at to begin with. Now, on the other hand, Daggerheart is a little more crunchy than some really narrative systems are, but it's certainly less so than 5e.
we have another one. Josh Karen for 5 says, interesting. I like D2D12 because it makes 2 critical fail and 24 critical hit less often, which is more realistic. However,
yeah, that's what I was saying before.
But that's not how Daggerheart works, because Daggerheart's if you roll doubles, it's a crit.
Right.
So that's 1 in 12.
and now this is interesting because I said that in the video. That is how it's worded in the article too. Is that like doubles are a critical, or maybe I don't actually, now I'm second guessing myself. I don't know if it says if it's a critical success, because the question that came up in the comments was like, oh, but do you still have to beat the DC? Which would make it interesting, right? Like, okay, because then it's probably like, do I need at least like 2 6s to still succeed? And then if I get doubles, but it's under the DC, is that a critical failure? Like, that was an interesting question that came up in the comments of my video about
it's a worthwhile question to ask.
So. Yeah,
because
it is a 1 in 12
systems
chance of getting doubles. So yeah.
So I've seen multiple systems that use doubles for criticals, and almost none of them use the system of just all doubles are criticals. Now, what I've seen from Daggerheart doesn't say. The ones that do it generally are like doubles are criticals if you succeed and critical failures if you fail. I've seen that. And I've also seen one in Fabula Ultima, there's doubles that are 6 or above are criticals, which is an interesting thing for their system because you have a variable size die that starts at D6, and it's very hard to get 2 6s on that. But if you have a bigger die, it's harder to get doubles on a bigger die, but it's easier to get doubles that are 6s because they're more 6s.
Yeah.
Although weirdly, D10 is the sweet spot because D12 is just so hard to get doubles again that it goes down.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
But still, I mean, unless, yeah, I did have this in the video too. I was like, check my math. But I think it's just a 1 in 12 chance of getting any double.
That's correct.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, yeah, because it's like,
which would be a
12,
higher
12
crit
across.
chance than a D20 20 if they were all included.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's 1 in
Right.
12.
A lot of systems that use that will have double ones be the critical failure in some cases, although obviously with D12s that is not very likely to happen.
So, why were you so interested in Daggerheart? Because Bob, obviously, you did a whole video on it. I was like, oh wow, he seems really interested in this. And I mean,
it's interesting to me because of honestly a lot of just I hate to keep dredging up OGL every now and again, but it's such a sore topic even for myself. But it starts there. It's because like Critical Role was kind of like the one brand who we know was consulted on like these decisions that were being made, among other big companies that like we were told like had seen the draft and all that. Like we know they must have been one of them, and they were relatively quiet during all of that, and like while all that was going on, and partially because like yes they have like brand deals with D&D and Beyond and all that, but we kind of knew like, all right, well, they're probably working on their own game if all these other companies are coming out saying like, yeah, we're making our own game now. And that was one thing I made a video about at the time, because they did an interview with Linda Codega, who asked them the question of if they're working on their own system or not. And like the entire interview, they were pretty coy about it, not really giving like a straight answer, but saying like, well, we're really excited, about that possibility if the chance ever comes up with the right team and it works for our show. It was all very conditional responses. But then lo and behold, then a couple months later, they have the announcement in their state of the press saying like, yeah, we've been working on these for a while. So like we know we know they're putting a lot of thought into this, and because they're, one of the biggest just one of the biggest TTRPG entities out there, I assume they're going to do a great job. So I was like really keen on like hearing more about it. And maybe because they had teased it so well with so little information originally, just basically saying we're making a game, I was really like waiting for any new info. So then when finally we got a lot from Gen Con, I was excited to dig into it and check it out.
Yeah, we spoke to Linda about that interview, and Linda said during the interview, after they would ask a question, like the PR person would like lean over and like tell them like how to answer, and like they were very, very careful during that interview. Like very careful.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I imagine they were basically, on a tightrope for those couple of weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
They did a good job though, honestly, because obviously they didn't come out of it looking like a bad guy or like a hero necessarily. They just kind of like towed the line that they needed to, and it worked out for them. So
I mean, it's definitely, there's a lot of new systems coming out. Like Dragon's Bane just came out like yesterday. That's the D&D of Europe. Like
right. That's what it sounds like anyway.
Well, yeah, I was asking them. I went to the Free League booth and I was asking them because I was like, what's the deal with this system? Because I hear a lot about it. And there was like, so there's Dungeons and Dragons, but in Europe it was like Dungeons and Demons or Demons and Dragons. I forgot. It's one of those. Yeah, and that was their version, but it's a different game. And it's completely different. It's been around since the 80s, and everyone, I guess in Europe, played that instead. And
I think there are different games in different parts of Europe. Like Dark Eye was very popular in Germany.
Yeah. Yes, that one, they tried to bring that over, but that failed terribly. Dragons and Demons. Yeah, I think that's what it was called. And yeah, it's been translated. So what's interesting about it, I find, is that Free League does a good job. They translated it, they did update it, but there's also, I don't know, like 40 years of content from this game that's ready to go to translate into English. So, they don't have to worry about, we have to create new adventures or we have to create new content. Like they have a ton of content just sitting there that they could just bring over.
So all they need is a hit Netflix show to talk about Dragons and Demons, once in their first episode, and
there you go.
To the races.
Yeah. No, the chat is all correcting. Yeah, it's mostly Northern Europe, Scandinavia.
The chat all got worried that I got banished during the last episode, Steven. What happened there?
Well, because
how did I get banished?
Well, because you were on the stream, and I was like, oh, Mark, I got banished. And then everyone thought I did something. But I also did think I said that you were doing your other stream. So
yeah, I had another stream that could have overlapped depending on how long they went, and so it didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, we went to like
in yesterday's with.
Yeah, he did one late last night. Yeah,
it was the only time they could. Baron and Professor could do it. So
I didn't get to catch it yet, but it's in my watch later.
That one,
both those guys, so I definitely want to see it. Yeah,
that was just us BSing for like 2 hours.
Well, that's the best kind.
I know. No, for actually 2.5, and it was because we pretty much all three of us hung out together like 90% of Gen Con, so it was just us recounting all the craziness basically. But no, Mark had A was late, and B, Mark had his stream because his stream started at 7 and our stream went to like 7:40. So
mine started at 8. So it turns out I maybe could have done it if I didn't eat any dinner until like.
I didn't eat any dinner, or Baron, or any of us. We're all starving. We're all like by the end, we're like, I'm starving.
But we didn't know how long it would take, so it didn't make any sense.
No, we didn't know, and it was last second too.
So to the question of the stream, will this kill Dungeons and Dragons? I don't think it will.
Bye D&D. It's gone.
I just don't think it.
No,
I don't think it has the same audience. And even with Critical Role's popularity, the brand name Dungeons and Dragons means a lot. And so, will it be successful because Critical Role has a big platform to push it? I think it might be. interesting ideas that I think that could excite people enough to take a look at it. It's got not just any 2d12, right? Each of the d12s is sort of has a like alignment between hope and fear, so that you not only add them up, but if the fear is higher, then a bad thing happens and you succeed at a cost. And if the hope is higher, then your hope goes up, which you can use to help someone else or yourself for more points. And then it's got like some interesting mechanics. It's enough heft to it that I think it won't spook Dungeons and Dragons players completely of being like, oh wait, what is this? This is just like I just say what I'm doing and roll. It's got a little more to it than that, but it's still not targeted, I think, at the same people, and I just don't think that the brand Dungeons and Dragons is ever going to lose the fact that that name means something.
Well,
yeah, I really feel like D&D is just kind of the Xerox or the Kleenex or the Band-Aid of tabletop games. And people have like I've gotten some flack for that before, but no other game, like if you ask somebody on the street, have you heard of tabletop role-playing games? Like, what? Have you heard of Dungeons and Dragons? Yes. Like, that's just as simple as it is. So, yeah.
Well,
100%.
I'm gonna slightly disagree, and I'm gonna tell you why. Well, if you watched the stream from yesterday, we sit around and we basically are talking about how good Baldur's Gate 3 is and how it implements D&D 5th edition probably better than anything I've ever seen, and definitely better than the VTT will ever. So we're like, wow, this is actually going to mess up their VTT. And then we're trying to figure out, okay, what is Hasbro and what's he going to do? And we basically been in the stream came to the conclusion that they're just going to, if they want to make $1 billion plus a year, that they're going to have to go all digital and just turn D&D into a video game. And they're just going to use the brand recognition to turn it into a video game. And maybe within 5-10 years, it just is going to be unrecognizable. So
then you're saying it's like if D&D deviates from this path, then
correct.
It would leave a vacuum for these other games? Basically?
Correct. That is correct.
That's different than Daggerheart killing D&D. That would be D&D getting... That's more of the like strike me down and I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
You got to get the eyes, you know.
But that's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah.
But
because like I said, I was equating it to TTRPGs, but you're so right that in 10 years, D&D, like the name D&D might and is definitely on the path to be more strongly associated with digital RPGs than with tabletop RPGs.
Oh, yeah. They actually said it in the last conference call. And then there was an article on Motley Fool that said, they're going all digital. And they're going to AI. Yeah. Like, it's like all this stuff I said, we've been saying, it's like, everyone's waking up. You know, it's like even 6 months ago when we were touting, like, oh, they're going to go all AI. And everyone's like, no, they're not. And then they literally just, signed with an AI company.
Then they said, totally we're not doing AI Dungeon Masters.
No. They said
that.
No.
They're doing other things.
No, wait. They actually said Hasbro, or no one in Hasbro. If you read the wording, it was very specific. Like no one is Hasbro is exploring AI, for any of our games. Because they're right. Because they
that's
hired
actually more strident. I remember them just saying we're not exploring AI dungeon masters, but they didn't say they weren't going to use AI for other things.
Well, it was worded in such a way that it's all was true because they basically they outsourced it to another company. And if you read it now, you're like, oh yeah, it works. It's exactly what they said. They just didn't say it, but they said it. So.
Yeah, I had a super short video when I saw that article. And again, this was something else that I heard of from comicbook.com. And then I didn't see any other videos about it, but it was like, they're partnering with this company. The name is escaping me now.
Yeah.
But who is working with them to help them produce AI in their otherwise analog games. And it was like, oh, okay. And then I even went back and I looked at the tweet and it said, I think it even just said like no one at Wizards of the Coast is working on AI stuff. I don't even think they said, they might not have even said Hasbro. Oh, okay. So it was like, okay, 6 months ago they weren't, and maybe they still aren't, but these people are doing exactly that right now.
Yeah.
So,
Now they're
yeah.
totally the game is totally transforming. It's not going to be D&D as we know it, I think. I just don't think it's going to be what it is. So something is going to fill it. You know, obviously Pathfinder is very well suited. But then we have other games like Daggerheart. And then Daggerheart could do what Lorcana can do. Is Lorcana going to probably destroy Magic? No. Is it going to give it a run for its money and make them wake up and start to, like, maybe, I don't know, re-examine the game and see how things are done? Probably.
You mean like Hearthstone did back in the day when that came out?
When Hearthstone came out, they were completely ignoring their digital presence to the point that it was like a total joke. And then when Hearthstone came out, they poured millions into Arena and made it a serious, they really went into digital big time, and it paid off. I mean, Arena does great for them, makes them a ton of money. So, and they would have never done that if it wasn't for Hearthstone, ever. We still would have had that crappy, like, Magic Online, whatever it was. It was so bad. I mean, it worked, but it was like written on like DOS, or like Windows 3.5. It was so poorly, but it worked. It definitely worked, but it was really poorly implemented. And then you look at Arena, and Arena's like super slick, like gorgeous, and that's what they want D&D. But the thing is also, when you compare when you look at the videos of the Hasbro and the WotC tabletop VTT, and it literally is like simulating miniatures attacking by like tipping over. Like, it was like, here's the monsters, here's the bad guy. It's like, oh yeah, I'm tipping over to attack you. And then you watch Baldur's Gate, and people are doing these amazing like finishes and like magic coming off, and they're like, just incredible animations, and you're like, yeah, it's gonna make their VTT look like garbage when it comes out. So I don't know what.
I mean, I still think maybe kind of like what Mark was saying with Daggerheart not being exactly the same audience as 5e. I think the VTT is for everyone who's using Roll20, where Baldur's Gate is for anybody who loves like Elden Ring and Elder Scrolls and traditional video game RPGs. So I do think, and now of course, like Baldur's Gate is like blowing every game out of the water right now, so it's like capturing a even bigger audience, and I'm sure there are people who like Baldur's Gate could be their introduction to D&D, and maybe that's what D&D will be in their head forever. But I still think like I wouldn't put it so like Baldur's Gate is competing with the VTT, because I still think the VTT is still a vehicle for playing the tabletop game, just doing it online and then taking care of the calculations. Whereas Baldur's Gate is like its own game with its own story, unless I'm mistaken. I haven't actually I'm probably the only person who hasn't downloaded Baldur's Gate yet.
Man.
So.
Well,
you're right. It is its own game with its own story.
Okay.
Yes and no. It is its own game with its own story, but for the combat system, because that's what the VTT mostly is. Yeah. The combat literally has dice rolls on the screen. Yeah. You see like the ads. Like everything is. It is an amazing simulation of a virtual tabletop like in a video game, because they
needed to do was just hire Larian Studios to build the VTT. I guess.
Well, here's the thing: Larian Studios has that. First, it's multiplayer, so you can play up to 4 people simultaneously on the game, and their past games had a dungeon master mode where you can DM. So I guarantee this is in there because it's the same engine. So I'm just like waiting. I'm like waiting for the announcement of like, oh, we bought Larian Studios for $1 billion or something. Because at this point, like, it's just going to be easier just to use them.
Yeah, it's almost weird to me how, because I don't remember if you actually had numbers or just estimates before, but I know from watching your previous streams, like you've talked about how Wizards of the Coast has poured probably too much money into this VTT, and it's like if they already had Larian working on Baldur's Gate for probably a similar amount of time, right?
Here's I can answer that real quick. So so Larian was signed on to do this 7 years ago. It was completely different management. In fact, anyone who's in management now wasn't even at there. And it's just, and D&D wasn't that big 7 years ago. It was just starting to get pretty well. The thing is, Larian was gun for hire. In fact, WotC, here's the best part, or the worst part, depending how you look at it. WotC had nothing to do with this game. It was just they they just licensed out the property, and then Larian took it from there. And they just have to pay. Larian just pays like 10%, 5 to 10% of sales to WotC, and that's it.
Wow.
So they basically are, of course, in their earnings call, they're going to be going crazy saying, "Oh, it's the highest rated PC game in the history of the world ever." Like it actually is, according to Metacritic. Like it's like the top 10, one of the highest rated games ever in history. I mean, it's these insane numbers that had nothing to do with them because it's all Larian. It's like yes, it's just it's D&D, the greatest thing ever. It's like, what did you have to do with it? Nothing whatsoever. We sold the rights to let them make a game on our system. That's it. They've been working on this thing for 7 years on their own with little to no, I mean, there's some input, but the main reason they were chosen is because Larian had an engine, and their engine runs on everything. It runs on Switch. It runs on iOS. It runs on everything. It runs on Mac, Linux, you name it. It runs. And it is seamless. And they got every single spell from D&D into this game, and they work. And I'm like, how are you gonna, like, some of those spells, you're like, come on, these are very situational. They're in there, man.
Well, yeah, I would love to see
works.
How some illusion magic works, because I remember Baron talked about that recently, and or he made a poll, I think, just trying to putting forth this question of what is illusion magic going to look like on the VTT, where obviously like everyone's looking at the same. I don't know, maybe it can show different players different things.
It does.
So I'd like to see that with Baldur's Gate. I don't know.
Yeah, so the way it works is that Dungeons and Discourse is on. Dungeons and Discourse, she had a very good video that I just saw where she also was talking about the AI and how they all fell for it. And everyone 6 months ago were like, nah, they're never going to come out with an AI dungeon master. That's not possible. There's no way. And then the 1-2 punch of Hasbro admitting they're working with an AI company, and then Baldur's Gate 3 coming out and seeing how amazing it is, saying, yeah, they can totally do this, and it's totally going to happen. And welcome to D&D land. D&D land's going to be, you can log on and play whenever you want. You can play for 10 minutes and then can log off. And you can play with people. You can do pickup groups. You can play with bots, whatever you want. It's going to become an MMO. That's what it's going to be. So, a lot of people are saying Baldur's Gate scripted. It's not AI. Oh, you're completely right. But the point is that it can be done, and D&D is going to be. It's not going to be a role playing game. It's going to turn into a video game, and there will be books still, but it's going to be a very small percentage of their sales. Because we went through their sales, I went through their numbers, and they're not selling as many books as you think. I'll tell you that much. It's like they sell.
I did watch that one as well, and then see a professor's video about it too.
Yeah,
that was really interesting to see those numbers.
Yeah, those numbers actually did include Amazon, but not recent Amazon, because they only signed up. Because people are like, they do include Amazon. I'm like, well, they did, but not all of Amazon. And we had 10 years of numbers, so I don't think it included all.
Part
10
of
years.
Amazon. Yeah.
It's part of Amazon. But the point is,
tricky.
like,
that's so annoying when a data set, it does something big change like that in the middle.
But the point is, people are thinking,
but it's an open data set that people can get on Bookshare. So like, it's the one that we have.
But the point is like, these books people think are selling millions, and they're like, yeah, it sold 100,000. That's one of their best selling books. It's like, that's not that great. Like, not for a company like WotC.
Again, shortly they sold a bunch that were not just from there, because even though that data set is 85% of all books overall, I think it's overrepresented in like trade paperbacks and things like that, and it's going to be underrepresented for hobby books because of the stores that it's missing.
I agree, but also they don't sell online. It's like you can say, oh well, they sell online. Like, no, they don't. They don't really sell. They
used to.
No, they don't.
They got rid of it recently. The ability to buy the print books separately from them.
They've never released.
Recent piece of news.
They've never released PDFs of any of their books ever. Any 5e books, they never have. The only way you can get them is through D&D. What's that? D&D Online. D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
That's the only place
D&D
you can
Beyond.
get it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and they did that so you could buy it twice. So he was like, "We want you to buy it twice." Well, anyhow, let's take a mini break, and the mini break is that we got a ton of people here because Bob World Builder got to try out his Bob World Building because right now we only have 56 hours to go on World of Battlezoo Indigo Isles. And we have one of the most mysterious islands in the Indigo Isles, Moon Shadow, which is like probably if you were running an adventure, that's where the high level monsters are. And Bob wrote it for us. Was that right? He wrote it in a cool way. We had it that we talked about it and we came up with a narrative of that you found a journal of some adventurer who found and went on the island and then like told a narrative story of what he discovered, and it doesn't end very well for him by the end. But I do like the story you tell, and if you're watching the stream, I actually have some pictures. Bob has not seen some of these pictures, so like here's the picture of Moonshadow of you approaching it, and we got the Ferrum Forest in there, and we got the mountains.
I think we showed that one to Bob.
That one we showed to Bob. The artist came back to me and he's like, "What do you think?" And I said, "Add more sharks to the water." And he goes, "Okay." So we added the sharks because it's crazy. But then here we go. Here's the journal. I might have shared this to you, where you actually have the journal from the explorer, where there's the chickens and we have the swarm chickens. We have a little feather, and then we even have the root vegetables. But that's something you invented. What were you thinking when you wrote some of this, Bob? When you came up with the ideas for this?
Well, I think, the chickens were definitely your original thing, but I put them everywhere. Then when you were like, "No, really use the chickens," so they were like in every section. The vegetables, I think, the blue ones was part of my idea. For sure, because that was something, I have like an environmental science background, and that was just like an interesting topic from my days as a student, where like one time, just as a theoretical discussion, I remember a professor talking about how like, plants only reflect green light because it's like how they're pigment evolved like in our atmosphere in these conditions, et cetera, et cetera. And in different environments, you could totally have like different color plants just based on what light they're absorbing. And so that's something I always like toy around with in my homebrew stuff, is like there's always a forest that's a weird color because just something strange is going on there. So the blue was part of that. And the root vegetables, I think, might have been mentioned somewhere in the other book that I was referencing. But yeah, the idea that this guy needed to survive on something, so there had to be some plants in this incredibly dark forest where nothing really should be able to grow. There had to be like some hardy plants, or at least like really weird plants there. That he could survive on.
Well, the reason I did the chickens is because if you go to Hawaii, there's chickens everywhere. They're like pigeons. Like you're like everywhere you go, there's chickens, and it's like the weirdest thing when you first get there. You're like, why are there chickens everywhere? And then you just get used to it, and there's just like, okay, I guess there's just chickens everywhere, and that's what they are. And so, you gotta have to have. And you and I were talking about world building. It's like you need to have a food source. You need to have something that people or that everyone eats, and whether it's rabbits or chickens or rats, like so, you need something that's very that populates quickly, that can be eaten by lots of various creatures. So chickens. And
Demenkus Priest says Guam also has chickens everywhere. There's a lot of islands that do, and the Indigo Isles are meant to be sort of island pastiche and not any one particular island chain. And so it's important to take some of those things into account.
And we did talk about when we were working on this, you were trying to come up with very realistic, and I was doing it too, like very realistic environments for a fantasy realm that's like, totally crazy.
Yeah, there's always that caveat of like for a fantasy world. So you get to like really play around with it. And if something doesn't work out the way you wanted it to, like with the science, it's like, magic. But Mark was just getting at with, Guam has a lot of chickens too. Like that's a big thing that any island, even in fantasy, should have, because that's a whole part of like island biogeography, is you're going to get really weird, perhaps evolution, probably weird evolution, depending on like how long ago that island actually diverted from its mainland or whatever, but also weird things when animals just happen to be brought there or find their way there somehow. Because I saw a comment there in the chat, no predators in Hawaii, like I guess asking why, nothing's eating all these chickens. And yeah, a lot of the times animals in nature don't eat things if they didn't evolve alongside them, or like sometimes they'll eat things too much. Like, it gets out of weird balance when you have these, quote unquote, exotic creatures being brought from one place to another. So yeah, like things can get out of balance, and that's why I'll end up with your island overrun with chickens, or and then of course, like in Hawaii, there's still definitely predators, because there are other predators on Hawaii that are like decimating their beautiful tropical bird populations that don't exist anywhere else in the world, and now like probably won't exist for a whole lot longer because of other animals, like I think certain kinds of snakes or like weasels or something that have been brought to Hawaii, just totally throwing off what otherwise would be there. So yeah, you get really weird effects on an island.
Now, the main reason also we had cryptfowl chickens, which are in our Battle Zoo Best, very strange and unusual. I'm like, reuse our monsters and put them in there, and you did, and they're like all over the place.
Well, yeah, and it seemed perfect for this island that's supposed to be, I don't know, cryptfowl, a great name, by the way, but it's just, I just feel like it fit really well in this like dark and mysterious island that nobody goes to. So it was, and yeah, it was just a perfect combination.
And then here's, but this one you came up with. This is the Runaway Falls, and then the feathered orca. I don't even know what the feathered orca is, but we drew a picture of it for you. And that's how the explorer finds the island, or gets saved, shall we say? Is that they get
I think the idea is it might be a cousin of rock, of like ROC, the rock bird, but with different plumage and appearance.
Right. Well, we gave it the same coloring as orca, so it looks like an orca.
I really love how that came out. I have not seen that one yet. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we obviously, I mean, it's funny because our artists, or the artist for this, is so good. Because I'm like, okay, draw it like, like someone who's like doing a sketch. And it's like, it's so hard for them to draw like that. It's like they're drawing with perfect. I'm like, no, it's too perfect. Like,
they had a special difficulty with the cave paintings at the end, because they wound up being too detailed and good of art for like something that would be in a cave painting.
I went there I normally never go more than 1 or 2 rounds. I think we had to do like 10 rounds of the cave paintings because they were so good. I was like, no, you have to make them look more primitive. And it's like, I don't want primitive. But yeah, he did a good job here, and he also smudged it. He like added little smudges, but we have it throughout. We took all the pages and took literally what you wrote and made pages. So that's the actual book itself is in the in our book. Awesome. So you get to see that. You get to see the actual notes from the famed explorer who died a horrible death.
Presumably.
I mean,
we don't know for sure what happened.
No one does.
Wait for book 2.
That's right.
But
so we had a couple of super chats during this time. Glade Riven said, I suspect Wizards with their VVT is working on augmented reality. And then after that, Creative Burst said, I hope it does wake up D&D. They pulled back most of what they introduced in their playtest. For example, Universal Spell List are going away because Wizard won't have the biggest spell list. At least one of them mentioned.
It's
always so weird to me, like how in any RPG, as someone who Wizard is like one of my favorite classes of all time in most RPG, but the Wizard lobby, like as a group of lobbyists in RPGs who always want Wizards to be the most or the best at things, just seems to be there. And it's I guess it's people like me who really like Wizard, but who also really want Wizard to be strong or better too, in a way that I don't care about. I just like them.
Yeah, I mean, the Wizard is such a weird thing. It's almost like, touching back on what we said about how you might want, your environment to be really realistic, but magic. It's like, well, you can have your war game. Like if we think back to like the history of this, where, okay, yeah, we have our warrior kind of class of character, but then we want to have this wizard too. And obviously it can't be as strong, like physically as strong as the warrior, the knight, whatever you're going to call it, because that's their thing. But it can do this. And so, yeah, I think there's always going to be this contingent of people who need the wizard to be a certain way. And and usually that's going to be doing some crazy spells because that's their thing.
So, let's say I was going to look at the augmented reality.
Yeah, that's interesting.
They're not doing it. I mean, even Facebook and Meta, whatever you want to call it, just put in like, after wasting $20 billion, even they're calling it quits on that because it's like, it's so far off. It's like, I'm probably the oldest one here by a mile. When Apple was always trying to come out with an iPhone, they came out with the Newton. Remember the Newton from 30 years ago? No one remembers the Newton, but the Newton was a handheld device that was like a brick, but it was the first handheld device, and it was before the Palm Pilot. And they just kept reiterating over and over until they eventually came out with the iPhone because Steve Jobs was obsessed with it. And that's where we are right now. We're in the augmented reality. People like it who like it a lot, but it's so far off. It's too bulky. It's too heavy. The one from Apple is probably the next step because not only do you wear it, but then you can actually see out of it, and it actually uses cameras, so you can actually, and then it has pictures showing where your eyes are, so you can actually see someone's eyes on it. So it's kind of a weird, like hybrid, like a cyborg thing. And that's, but it also costs $3,500. So until it ends up being like, a couple $100 and it's just something you literally slap on your face and don't even know you have on. Yeah. Or it's
Steven, what's your perspective on Google Glass then? Because this was like 10 years ago.
Yes.
Kind of the first of its kind doing that sort of thing. Well, that I remember.
Oh yeah.
And I wasn't really into the news of it at the time, but I just know it kind of like appeared. People were like, whoa, what's this? And then it went away.
It disappeared really fast. And I'm not sure. I bet you what ended up happening is that it got a lot of press, but Google they probably couldn't figure out a way to monetize it, and that's what keeps happening. A lot of these things that Google does, they throw a lot at the wall to see what sticks, and then they eventually then will stick with the things that they can really monetize or turn into something. And Google Glass, it's weird because I thought it was doing well, but then people were making fun of people, and I would see people wearing it in Manhattan. Right. That's when I was in Manhattan. People like it just came and went. And even I'm not exactly sure because I never even tried one, but I heard there was a lot of issues with people with privacy. Someone wrote it's like recording, like that was right before iPhones became what they are now. Sorry, iPhones, smartphones became what they are now. Because now everyone has a camera, everyone's being recorded, everyone's used to it. But I think it was a little too ahead of its time. People are like, oh, I don't want to be recorded. I don't want to have my privacy, taken away from me. Meanwhile, you can ask Alexa for something, and there you go. Your privacy's taken away from you because it's recording everything you say. So I think it was ahead of its time and not powerful enough. And they also figured out that it just was not going to make them any money, and they kind of gave it up.
Yeah, because that's what I'm kind of still surprised about when I keep seeing these new headsets come out that are these giant things you wear like a helmet practically. Whereas Google Glass, I think either basically was a pair of glasses or a thing you put on to your own glasses. I don't remember.
It was small. It was very small.
Yeah.
It was very small. Yeah. But what happens with all these technologies, there's two things you need. Well, there's more than two. I actually took a course on this in college, believe it or not. History of Technology it was called. It's very interesting. And one of the things was you need a killer app. That's like what's the killer app? And that's like, what can you not live without? And the thing with the iPhone was the iPhone had 100 killer apps. It didn't have one, and that's why iPhones are what they are. It's like, oh my God, it does everything. And if you look, there's these graphics of like, here's the technologies the iPhone replaced. And you have the iPhone here, and then you have a mountain of like, cameras, VHS, recorders. It's like, it's just GPS, computers, everything. It's like 100 different technologies are replaced in one tiny square.
So Glade Riven wants to clarify their statement about the AR. It said, I'm talking about using your iPhone like Pokemon Go, but then it will show a virtual 2-foot tall animated dragon on your Chess X mat that is fighting against your minis.
No, they're not doing that. There's no reason to, because
I could see them trying it.
And they wouldn't. It's too.
I could see that happening in a
too many steps.
D&D Direct video.
I could see them farming it out to somebody else who
Right.
wanted to do it for them, and they didn't have to deal with it or something like that.
Nope.
Being like, "Hey, licensed partner."
Nope. I'll tell you why. Because if you look,
not even as a way to like
Nope.
view the VTT or something.
Nope.
No.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because the people that got it from Microsoft and Zynga, and Zynga is all about lowest common denominator, quickly getting into the game and spending money. So they're going to make this as fast and easy and seamless as possible. And everything you're describing is extra steps.
Fair enough.
They don't want any extra steps. like, oh, you got to have a mat, you got to get people, you got to have. Nah, that's way too much work. It's like, can I press a button and start spending my money? That's how much work they want. That's it. That's a level of work, and that's how Zynga. That's how these games all work, and it's too well. Also, the walled garden. They're also going to walled garden everything, and that's what's hot in technology right now. Is everyone is that's why there's so many streaming services out. Is they're trying to lock you into their service so that you subscribe and then never unsubscribe, because then you'll lose everything. And it works because, like, I just heard Disney was like raising the prices again, and I was like, well, I think I might cancel Disney because there's nothing I watch on it. But then they're like, oh, we got Ahsoka coming out, and I'm like, all right, well, I kind of want to see that, and that seemed pretty good, so I'll watch that, and then we'll not canceling the service because of that one damn show. You know, it works. So that's what they want. They want us to make it $9.99, and you pay that every month, and then every D&D book and everything's on one place, and then you'll never leave, because then you'll lose all your characters, you lose all your campaigns, you lose everything. And then your friends will be angry at you. Everyone will be angry at you. And that's the other thing, social pressure. You get your friends angry at you because you can't.
That's an interesting point, because it's definitely different for a D&D group, especially if you're the DM who like has all of that saved versus just, you know, maybe keeping up with the same show as your friends. Like there's still some pressure there, but it's not as much as like, well, we've all poured hours into you. I don't know. In that case, maybe you could ask your friends to start pitching in to pay for the service, but it's a little different. Yeah.
Oh, wait. So we have two monster. Okay, we'll do the $20 super chat from Creative Burst. I hope it does wake up D&D. They're pulling back most of what they introduced in the playtest. For example, Universal was
did that.
Oh, we did that one. Sorry.
We touched on this. And I'll just add that, like, I know I did see a video or two pop up about this, or like articles as well, people talking about how they've pulled stuff away. And I know the spell list was the one mentioned, but yeah, I don't know enough about, like, I haven't been following the playtest super closely to know what
I'm concerned about is, okay, I know for a fact, like, you need to start. Okay, so now I recently signed with Diamond and to do our book distribution for the Battle Zoo books, and I'm learning a lot about professional, like, distribution. So the books have to be listed 9 months out, which means we're going to find out what the final names and titles, at least I am, because I'm on all those lists, whenever this is coming out, 9 months before, because that's the time that's needed. Even WotC has to abide by that. So very, very soon, we're going to be hearing what the final names for all their books are. We're going to have to find out information about them, because they have to start providing sales sheets and sales info to all the stores. Even someone like WotC has to abide by these rules. They can't just show up and say, "Oh, here you go." It's like a month later. Here we're gonna, they can't come into August and say we're putting out these books in your stores in September. You just can't do that. So they have to start laying out these books and getting them printed, like, now, like, really soon.
I mean, they must. Right. I wonder how far along all that already is.
It has to be really far along.
It's got to be close.
It's got to be very close. Like, Like by the end
even
of the
if we're
year,
expecting late 2020, like even if it was Christmas 2024 for the release of all this, right? It would have to be by March.
at the bare minimum, and they really have to have everything done by now. Like by this December, it has to be done. So I don't know how much more they can be playtesting. Like they really have to be wrapping it up.
Or they can playtest as much as they want, because then they'll just change it on D&D Beyond, right? And not worry about the print book so much.
I guess that's
if they're not up to
It
date
is
with
possible.
the latest.
So we had another super chat.
Huge super chat.
For
The
$100
monster.
for
I
Dragoon of
know.
Kyrie that said to answer a bit of how Larian made this game. They paid WotC for the licensing rights about 7 years ago to make the game. Wanted to point this out because of the current drama of game devs being wrong about WotC approaching Larian for this game. Also have $100.
Yeah, that it's the rights. I actually was just watching that because I love Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and played those to death. And then after Baldur's Gate 2 came out, way back in the year 2000, there was all these rumors of Baldur's Gate 3, but then the studio, because it was BioWare and I forgot the other studio that published it, but they kind of went out of business, and then they started up a new firm. So there was all this like drama over how Baldur's Gate 3 was going to be made. And yeah, Larian did approach them, and they had the engine, and they had their two previous games, which are absolutely fantastic. Divine Divinity Originals in 1 and 2 are like, look at the reviews for those. Those are in the mid 90s too. Like, it's not like they came out of nowhere and did this. Like, they showed they knew how to do it. And then WotC, as they said, they paid for the right. And now that not only did they pay the right to do this, Larian, but then they're also paying a percentage of every sale to WotC. So WotC is literally sitting back doing nothing, making millions of dollars, and they're gonna be touting it like it's all them.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that back in the days of the original Baldur's Gates and those games that they were making more money off the percentages on that than
the books.
Oh yeah.
For it would have been TSR at the time.
Yeah. Oh, Black Isle, right? It was Black Isle was the company.
Yeah, Black Isle from on the game on like making Baldur's Gate side, but I mean TSR on the side of receiving the bucks.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Larian, they're smart. I mean, they have an engine, they had everything, they proved that they know how to make games, and then they had 400 plus people working on a game for 6 years with 3 years playtesting. And now everyone's complaining that they're like, well, don't get used to that because we can't make games like that. Like, AAA studios can't do, we can't do games that good. And the answer is you can. You
have to give them enough time.
No, they also have no microtransactions, no copy protection. No, there's nothing. It's like, so let me get this straight. I spent $60, not $70, which everyone's charging now, for a game that has everything I want in it, and it's done. The answer is yes. And there's no microtransactions, there's nothing extra. It's like, nope, that's it. It's like, and I can play this game for hundreds and hundreds of hours for $60. Yep. And it's cross-compatible, so I can even play with my friends on other systems. Yep. It's like, I don't get it. Where's the problem here? How do you make money? It's like, it doesn't make any sense. That's why people are losing their minds, because it's like, where's the catch? Where's the extra snatch or snub that we normally get? It's crazy.
It's a little funny to me, just personally, because like, here's the thing. When I was in high school and a little bit early in college, like all I did was play video games, but pretty much since I discovered D&D, it was just like all tabletop. And like my wife plays a lot of video games still, hasn't gotten Baldur's Gate yet because we're waiting for it to come out on PlayStation. But yeah, when I was like in my peak video gamer mode, like persona, that's how all the games were. It was $60 and you just buy everything. So I feel like I fortunately kind of missed this wave of like the microtransactions and stuff. But I don't know. It's like weird seeing like kind of coming back into it a little bit now, or at least being exposed to like video games a lot more today, just because it's still kind of like tied into like the gamer culture around D&D stuff. Still, it's really interesting seeing how all this has evolved, like kind of under my feet. and thinking about how, like, yeah, if I were to get back into video games today, there's probably very few that I would like, Baldur's Gate would be one of them. Very few that I would want to invest my time and money in, just because of what I'm used to, it's being like from 10 years ago or more than that, really.
There's still games like that. There's still games like that out there. I mean, there's
but it's like, I guess, like you said, though, it's you're expecting most games to not come out finished, to or to come out with like a million other things you kind of want to buy to like get the full experience,
right?
And
so
where my reference point is literally like Halo 3 and like Gears of War 2, and I don't even know which Call of Duty, but yeah.
It's really good. Baldur's Gate 3, it's so good.
So Derek has shown up.
I know Derek showed up.
Super chat and bring us back more from last night's topic to today's by saying, just joined. Nice topic. Definitely think Daggerheart will make an impact.
Well, do you think? I think that they are going to start playing with Daggerheart on their next
Critical Role.
Role.
Why wouldn't
they? This is the big question.
Yeah.
Is it possible?
That would be outrageous if they didn't do it.
I was gonna say, is it possible to make a poll in your chat?
In
this stream.
Yeah,
because I would love to see what the audience thinks about that. Like, will Critical Role switch to Daggerheart during campaign 3, during campaign 4, or never? That's what I want to.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Also, any of you who picked never, what are you doing?
Wait, I want to see. Wait, what was the question?
I don't know. I mean, maybe
during was it campaign?
Like, I'm really torn between those ideas. Like,
or I guess Bob, would you pick never if they sometimes do Daggerheart, but they don't ever stop D&D entirely? Would that be never, or would that be?
So wait, it's campaign 3, campaign 4,
cast, like
or never
7 or whatever people that we've been seeing like as Critical Role for the last 8 years or whatever it's been. If they, as their main group, Thursday night, right, don't play Daggerheart, if they're still playing D&D, that would be never.
So wait, it's so campaign 3,
campaign 4, or never.
Never, and I'll put in parentheses.
So I guess it's like will they switch to Daggerheart as their main show for campaign 3, campaign 4?
I see. I think they're going to try it on a sideshow first to make sure that they have the eyes. They're going to be cautious, and then they will switch if they can, because they'd much rather have their own product that is making them money elsewhere be the thing that they're showing off. But not if it's going to tank their numbers.
Boom!
Right? So that's my guess.
Here's the survey. Here we go. It's out. Let's see what people say.
Champagne, my favorite.
Boom. That's immediately campaign 4. Everyone's like voting campaign 4.
Well, I was gonna pick campaign 4 too.
I think champagne because 4 I
think
for sure.
I think you guys.
I wrote champagne.
It's like probably
champagne 4, champagne 3. Close enough.
You know who uses champagne 4? The sorcerer class.
The sorcerer uses champagne in their campaigns. Hey man, there's no spell check. I live and die on spell check, and there's no spell check in this, so it didn't have the little red underline.
Well, know what's interesting though is that there's actually an equal or close to equal number of people saying that they'll switch, almost immediately during campaign 3, or that they'll just stick with D&D for their main show.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a toss up between those two, but then of course the majority saying their next campaign will be Daggerheart.
It's going to be Daggerheart. It's going to look. They just signed multiple multi-million-dollar deals with Amazon. When I was overseas, I was going to comic book stores, and I'd see people working there, and people wearing Critical Role pins in Spain.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god! I was like, this is really popular. Their show.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
There's a show in Wembley Stadium. Okay? They're doing a live show in Wembley Stadium. Sold out in 12 minutes.
Wow.
This is 12
minutes, yeah.
This is to watch people play D&D. Okay?
Yeah.
Like, it's really popular. It's like, don't underestimate how popular they are. And if they switch to Daggerheart.
But what that just made me think of was earlier we were talking about so and so game is like the D&D of Germany. Well,
Right.
Critical Role probably has a very strong worldwide reach.
It does.
Like we already know that, I
Yeah,
guess.
it does.
If you're literally seeing it before your own eyes. And it might be the D&D of like other countries before it becomes the D&D of the United States as well. So
That's true.
Like if it's just more affordable in like other countries, because like I
Correct.
know that's a barrier for role-playing games in a lot of countries.
Mhm.
And maybe the design, like maybe because a lot of people are hung up on like the cards thing, maybe that's going to appeal more to people who are, I don't know, are coming from other games in other countries or something. That's interesting.
So I guess the
question to think about.
tactile nature of the cards does have an element to it that also makes it so that if you don't have the cards, that because you bought the physical game or a VTT that handles the cards, you kind of have to abstract away the cards in a way that might be less satisfying for people who are in an in-between situation where they just have a PDF and they don't have the VTT or the actual physical cards.
Whatever they're doing, they've been planning this. Like I guarantee they have this all sketched out.
I'm sure they have an answer.
Yeah, they know exactly when campaign 3. Well, when is Daggerheart supposed to come out? Does anyone know?
I think it's just 2024.
Okay.
But they haven't said when.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not coming out this year. It's still coming out next year. So.
Yeah.
All right. And see, I think the cards mechanic, that actually, I think that hurts them because I'm like, that is a pain in the neck to print and distribute. And then small things in stores. I mean, maybe it works better in Europe, but like a lot of stores don't like to give shelf space to tiny things. They're easy to steal.
Well, that's what I say. My thought is like, will it be pretty much sold like a board game where the cards and the book just come in a big box?
Yeah.
Because that's how they have other games right now that are all in just like, I don't know if they're board games, but I know they at least have like 1 or 2 card games that are already out, I think. And, they're just in boxes like regular card games. So that could be the direction they go with how they like market this as well, which I think would be really interesting because then it's like not, on its surface doesn't appear like a competitor to D&D because it'll look like a different kind of game, but it's actually kind of getting toward the same style of play, or it's a similar one like we talked about.
Yeah, and people pointing out every time you check paper, the cards go over the place. I mean, I actually I saw that. I was like, well, it seems like a cool idea, but I don't know how realistic and how useful it is to have cards representing your characters realistically.
The logistics of it seem like they are a little bit, for the reasons everybody said about the cards spilling off when you move the sheet around.
Yeah, it's kind of a pain. And also, like, are they going to be like Paizo does a lot of play testing. We do a lot of play testing. Even WotC does a lot of play testing. Are they going to play test this? Like, are they going to have a public play or even a big private play test? Like, it's one thing to say you're coming out with it. I mean, Mark, you could talk about this more than anyone because you've done it professionally. Like, don't you kind of want, like, if you're coming out with a brand new role-play game system of this size and caliber, don't you want some testing? Like, don't you want some feedback?
So the more mechanical that your game is, the more rules heavy, the more that you need to make sure that you have a bunch of playtesters who are not just your staff who know the game, because you're going to run into some problems. But if you are a little bit more narrative, you can generally get away with doing fine by just doing internal playtests. Then it's a continuum, though. Obviously, there are situations where maybe you could say narrative games could have used more external playtests, or situations where you have more mechanistic games that their internal playtest worked well. It depends on the situation.
Yeah, and the other thing I saw one article I forgot who it was, but they said something about how they were impressed with the PC mechanics, but they saw absolutely zero GM mechanics or DM mechanics, and they're very worried because even WotC admitted that they really fell short on helping, the person who has to run the game. And that's like, and everyone seems to fall short on that, especially for meaty games, crunchy games. Like, this game is not supposed to be like a one-shot. This is supposed to be a game that you could run like D&D or Pathfinder. Like, you can play entire campaigns on. So you need to really make sure there's a lot of support material for DMs. Like, you can't just have 10 pages for the DM and 200 pages for the players. You need to have a lot of information for the DMs. So, and no one says to do that.
It'll be there.
Yeah,
I imagine it'll be there. Like, I don't know, I guess how mechanical it would be, but I could easily see like Darrington Press, if they don't already, publishing a book for game masters about how to run great games, and everyone will buy it because it could have Matt's face on the cover if they wanted, and like, and he's the game master. Everybody knows, like, he's the game master, just because he's the most popular. So
that's true.
Make a game mastering book called The Matt Mercer Effect.
Oh,
there it is.
I guarantee it'll be a picture of him.
And there you go, or whatever.
That's a good idea. I mean, why not? I mean, if you're gonna have a DM book, might as well use him. We did have a super chat.
From Omega Rogue LP that said Dimension 20 started their new series, Mentopolis, playing the a non-D&D system that is a hack of kids on bikes. What are your thoughts on that?
I think after the OGL fiasco, everyone who had a actual play who was using D&D is swapping out D&D for two reasons. One, they're worried about the OGL thing, and two, D&D is going to be changing systems next year, so they don't want to get stuck with the old system in the middle of the change. So it's almost like a in-between game to determine what are we going to do? Are we going to stick with D&D? Or we're going to go to Dragonheart or Daggerheart? What are we doing? So let's just go to something else.
Well, and I think for a lot of these shows, like, everybody knows how Critical Role, the cast, I should say, was playing Pathfinder at home,
correct,
before they went on their stream or whatever. But they switched to D&D because it was a bigger name and because it was a lighter system that was just like a little easier to run on stream without as much referencing, I guess, is like the perception anyway. And I think now that, especially after D&D kind of took this hit to the name, especially in the online sphere where like these people are promoting their shows, like in that same atmosphere of like, the same people who know about the OGL also know about these shows, is what I was getting at there. Now they see that, well, 5e itself is still not like the smoothest system for the very narrative style of play that they want on their shows. So yeah, I think going to something, I don't know Kids on Bikes.
Kids on Bikes,
I assume it's a much lighter system.
It is. It's actually got great art, and they even came out with a sequel. I forgot what it was called, but it was very similar. Kids on Bikes it's Stranger Things.
Oh, isn't there? Is Kids on Brooms the same?
Yes.
People? Same developer?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Same people.
I haven't actually read that either, but the name is in my
Kids
head.
on Bikes is Stranger Things. It's literally 80s, like being a kid. That's it. It's very fun.
So there's that, and I don't know if it's officially under Dimension 20 or Dropout, but I know that some of the cast, I don't remember if it's including Brennan Lee Mulligan or not. I think he is the game master though. Are launching they did a Kickstarter or something or a Patreon go up for a podcast that they're going to make. Like, it's just an audio show, and it's called Worlds Beyond Number. This was like probably 6 months ago or more. And it was like whatever it was very successful, whether it was the launch of the Patreon or something, but it's not using D&D. And that was a big story at the time, because I think that was that might have even been before OGL. So yeah, I think these shows are starting to branch out, realizing that like even 5e, like people love to compare it to like previous editions of D&D and to Pathfinder and say that, oh, 5e, like, it's so simple. But like, really, it's a pretty crunchy system if you're playing it with people who are like actors trying to really just portray a character more so than get like wrapped up in all the things on their sheet, So yeah, I think for these shows, it makes sense to use systems besides 5e.
So we have the poll. I'm going to close it. And we have 15% say Champagne 3. It's when they'll switch over. 74% say Champagne 4, and 11% say never. But obviously, the huge majority went with whenever they end their whenever they end Campaign 3, when they start the new
Right.
campaign. What they would probably be smart to do is start campaign 4, start using Daggerheart before it's out, like months before it's out, to prime the pump, as it's called, and get everyone ready for it. And then when it comes out, people are salivating and dying to play it.
Yeah,
I agree, because I haven't been following a lot of the Candela Obscura show. Like I ended up not watching any of the episodes yet.
No.
But I feel like the first episode was like really like a big deal. Like it was very popular or whatever. But yeah, I don't know if it's still like riding that wave. But I'm sure they'll do the same thing with
But it also came out like
they launch it as its own little show first, and then say what?
I was gonna say it only comes out like once a month, which is hard to like.
Oh, okay.
That's like
That's
hard.
probably why I haven't heard.
Yeah, I know. Well, because what happens, it's like once a month. Like, okay, it's hard to stay on top of something that comes out once a month. It's like, or a show like that. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, right. I heard a lot about it, and then it totally disappeared. But yeah, no, Daggerheart. It's people think it's impossible to follow. I didn't watch any of it, and the thing with me, Critical Role, I tried to watch it, and it was just too much. But I love the series on Netflix, and I was like, sorry, on Amazon.
Oh yeah,
Prime. I'm like, that's all I need. I'm like, oh, is that what they're doing in animated form? Perfect. That's all I need with the same voice actors. Great. I'll take that one. That's my way of watching Critical Role. And from what I understand, it's pretty much the same story, just condensed. I was like, good, perfect. I'm caught up. Even better. But can you imagine?
So I have a good question for you, but I want to also ask as a secondary question. Earlier, you mentioned that we might take a little break.
Oh yeah, we can take a break now.
Got caught up in talking about
we did take the break.
We take a break. No, you want to take a break?
But
you want to take a break?
The break was Moonshadow? I thought everybody was seeing Moonshadow.
They were seeing it. Everyone was seeing it. No, you want a little break?
Oh, break from Dagger. Okay, I thought you meant like us take a tiny break.
No, you want a tiny break?
Yeah, can we do a tiny
Yes,
break?
we're going to do a tiny break.
Okay, thank you.
Starting now.
Hi, Barbarian here. Are you a game master looking for an amazing game world rich in lore and strange new creatures to run your D&D or Pathfinder 2 game in? Well, look no further than the world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles. The world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles contains everything you need to set sail for adventure. Except maybe a boat. You're probably gonna have to buy your own boat. But the book itself contains a detailed overview of key locations on the Indigo Isles, dozens of story hooks and NPCs, and details on the ancient spiritual religion known as the Eld. Wow, that sounds spooky. Don't forget to take your weapons with you. You'll also get 15 new dragons as monsters, featuring the entire family of wild dragons from the Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons book to help you murderize your players' precious characters. And you'll get gobs of new magic items to make them feel like they might have a chance. But they won't, will they? What's more, there are tons of new character options, 10 new ancestries, 10, and new archetypes and subclasses and heritages, and seven familiars native to the Indigo Isles. Remember, the world of Battlezoo Indigo Isles comes in 2 versions, one for D&D 5e and another for Pathfinder 2. Oh yeah, and they're releasing the PDF right after the Kickstarter ends. If you'd like a new fantastical world to amaze your players with, click the link below and back the Kickstarter today.
Oh, look at that. You literally you timed it to the second. So did I. Like I ran in and Mark was just sitting here, just staring. He's like, oh yeah. Yes, after you and others have complained because our show goes so long, they're like, you need a break. I was like, okay, so we put in breaks. But you see, if you're into it enough, you don't need a break. You just keep going. Power through. So what's your question? You had a question, Bob. What's this magic question?
Right. So yeah, because you said it's hard to follow Critical Role, and because I assume it's like could be a number of factors. Episodes are super long. They come out with one of these super long episodes almost every week. A lot of characters. They're doing a lot of guests and stuff nowadays, anyway. But have you ever watched one of the Dimension 20 series, or like episodes even?
Yeah, 1 or 2. I haven't watched a ton.
Basically, I just was trying to gauge if that was easier to follow, because I personally find that it's easier to watch anyway, just
I would-
because it's like
well-
shorter episodes. They're edited. Yeah.
I used to watch Glass Cannon a lot. And I liked the first very beginning of Glass Cannon. I thought that was a lot of fun. But of all time, my favorite, I'll tell you my favorite is
Is
Harmon.
it Roll for Combat?
Roll for Combat. But yeah, my second favorite, because I do my own, but that's actually is my favorite to listen to, is Harmon Quest by Dan Harmon.
Oh, okay.
Dan Harmon he was playing Pathfinder. Wasn't even D&D, it was Pathfinder First Edition. And they had Spencer Crittenden, who was their DM, and they had a live show podcast. And the people on his show was Dan Harmon, who everyone knows. I mean, it's like super genius writer, producer extraordinaire from Rick and Morty and Community and a million other things. And they also had, I forgot his name, but it's one of the guys from Whose Line Is It Anyway? So we have like,
Oh, really?
yeah, like, okay, let's see, one of the best improv people on Earth with one of the best writers on Earth with Spencer Crittenden, who was a really good DM, like really good. And his wife or ex-wife now at the time was also on the show, who knew nothing about role-playing games. And not only did they get, Greg Probst only came on once in a while. Greg Probst, I'll get to him in a second. They had these shows. Oh my God, they're still alive. They are amazing. They're amazing. Because he wrote everything, and his DM style too was so cool. He kept a little notebook, and everything was his notebook. And you have two of the most creative people on planet Earth who were often very, very drunk when they recorded these shows, with a live audience in LA, which is the king of like improv and on this. And he totally held it together, and it was fascinating to listen to. I loved it. I still love it.
I like the
so
differences
good.
between the guests and like how much they were into it or understood what was going on. Like of the ones that I watched, there was one guy who was the guy who was in Silicon Valley, and he clearly understood what he was doing, what the role-playing games were. He brought his dice. He tried to roll his own rolls, where the GM basically usually just did 100% of all of the mechanics of everything, like himself, while people just kind of, like emoted and did improv, and then the GM would just like roll to the side for a while and then come back and say what happened. But I found that too. I was like, hey, look, he's trying to play. Whereas like there are other guests, like one who would just like keep retconning what she said she had done to be different than what had been done before. And it was hilarious because they had animators who went on and animated some of the things that had been said. And the animators were clearly very snarky about the fact that guest was just changing what she was saying, because they animated showing her character putting like something in her backpack or something like that, like it's storing it in her backpack. And then later she's like, no, I totally had that. It was on my, it was ready to draw. And then, so it showed her character, like while they were in the middle of the fight, just like sneakily grabbing it from the backpack and putting it on her hip as the player was arguing about that. And then putting it from there, because since they animated it, they had already put in like the correct thing from before it got to that point. I thought that was funny.
It was Aubrey
that cracked me up.
Aubrey Plaza, from like Parks and Rec and everything else. She was the guest who kept doing that. By the way, you should watch it, because they also did something very fascinating, because he had people who didn't know how to play. So the GM would roll the dice for everyone. And Mark
was just saying the GM pretty much rolled everything, I guess.
They rolled
the GM did everything.
And they did have character sheets, and he would then talk to them and then even level them up. He basically was the role of the computer. And then they would go, and they were insane. I mean, this show, it's a podcast. You can listen to it. They did hundreds of episodes. There's also an animated series, which is what Mark's talking about.
Or I thought it was
no,
Harmon Quest was
Harmon Quest.
It was live, but it would occasionally show bits of cartoon.
Harmon Quest was the half-hour live show. Harmon Town is the podcast where they played Pathfinder, and Greg Probst played a unicorn called Tylenol with codeine. If you listen to any of his episodes, I almost died. I was laughing so hard. I mean, I was laughing. I literally could almost died. It is insane how funny he is, and he's making it all up on the spot. And you're like, this guy. These are the master improvers, the best of the best playing D&D Pathfinder. Yeah. There is that's the problem. It kind of ruined me listening to anything else because a lot of them are slow. A lot of them, you know, a lot of these are slow, and they're sitting there and they're like joking, and then you hear like a 2-second pause. No, these guys, whose line is it anyway? Pros, there's no pause, there's no break. It just keeps going, and they're riffing off each other, and they're geniuses, and it's so fast. And the poor dungeon master somehow holds it together. I don't know how he does it. Oh my god!
I'm gonna have to check that out. Out because I remember I had only really heard of it just when I was kind of getting into D&D, and it was before. Like I got into D&D only a year or so before Critical Role, I think, like started. It was
check
like
it
2015.
Out. It's so good.
And I remember at the time coming across the animated stuff specifically, because it was like I was definitely watching videos of it, not listening to the podcast, and only watching like a little bit of it because I think I still didn't really like understand the game a lot then, outside of how my one group played it, you know. But it'd definitely be something to revisit, because just what you're saying about how like when you really have just comedic geniuses in a room doing almost anything. Like I love to listen to that. Like comedy is definitely my favorite. I don't know. Comedy in general is like my favorite form of entertainment, whether it's like movies or podcasts or whatever. Like I just want to laugh along with what I'm listening to. And that's one reason I actually do prefer like Dimension 20 to Critical Role myself, just because like they're comedians, most of them. And it's like a tighter edited show. So there's not a lot of like sitting, like waiting around or whatever. But yeah, that'd be really fun for me, I think, to check that out. So I'm gonna give it a shot.
Oh my god, there's a season 3 of Harmon Quest. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, there is. You didn't know?
No, I only saw season 1 and 2. Oh no, I have something to look forward to now. I'm gonna watch season 3. Well, season 1 was really good. Eric Mona would watch the live tapings of Harmon Quest, and now
I was at Paizo at the time, so it was definitely something that
you want to hear something crazy? I think I told you this. At the banquet at PaizoCon, I sat next to Spencer Crittenden and hung out with him and talked to him quite a bit. And he's a very quiet guy, but it was fun. So, because he was a guest. Remember that at PaizoCon one year?
Yep.
He was the guest of honor. So, anyhow, Bob, you got homework, but I promise you, I would probably start with Harmon Quest because you can find it. It's half hour too, and it's animated. It's the same cast.
More digestible.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot more digestible. But you can even just. It doesn't matter. You don't need to hear the story. I'll find out which episodes of Harmontown. Harmontown with whenever they had special guests. Oh God. Yeah. You know who was on there once? This is how crazy it was. They had Robin Williams, because he was just in the audience. Wow. I mean, it was a crazy the people on this show. Like it was like and this is back, you know, way before. This is back in like 2013, 2012. Like no one was doing this. No one.
Yeah, it is so weird to think of how ahead of its time it was, because today, like, I don't know, I guess the closest we've even gotten to anything like this would be when like Matt Mercer ran a one-on-one session with Stephen Colbert. Like that's kind of
I remember that,
because it's like we don't have huge celebrities engaging with D&D right now, and it's weird because it's more popular than it was when Harmon Quest was going.
I'll tell you a secret. They do. Yeah. They play a lot. They just play in secret.
Well, sure. Yeah, I do know there's Joe Manganiello has like his super group of LA celebrities like playing at his like custom. I watched a whole video about his table being made. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's a big time player. Like he's an actual player, but a lot of In fact, the person you're talking about, Mark, who left, he actually brought his own dice, and the reason he brought his own dice, I forgot his name, is because he recorded Harmon Quest and then had to leave because then he was playing his weekly game of Call of Cthulhu. So that's how much of a geek he was in real life.
There
Or
you
still
go.
is.
So yeah, he was let's see. It's whoever he was in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I'm
I
looking
just
it
don't
up.
know the name of a lot of people.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
So
He was the main guy in Silicon Valley.
yes.
He was fantastic. Like, of all the people, he actually
His name is Thomas Middleditch.
Oh, Thomas Middleton. Yeah.
Middleditch.
Middle pitch, Middleton, middle something.
He played
middle
a
pitch.
halfling who and he knew what like the skills were and what the appropriate ones to roll were.
He was the only
so
person who actually knew how to play ever.
He was like, he saw there was like a mystic rune. And he's like, could I roll an arcana on this one?
And then the other players, the other ones were like, oh, ooh, ringer.
Yeah, they did. They said that. Also, I think it may have been Chelsea Peretti who was constantly trying to move where she had put things in the inventory and other things like that. But it may have been Aubrey Plaza. They were both on that season. It was one of the two.
One of those two. But anyhow, back to your original question is that, just find whatever you like. Like the thing with Critical Role is I tried really hard. And I think they do a very, very, very good job, but I also think it's a little too long for me. Like, it's just, that's old man syndrome there,
Yeah,
and
it's the same for me.
Once the campaign is like 10 episodes in, that's like 40 hours to catch up on if you
yeah.
Like,
it's a lot of hours.
It's just kind of too much. Like, unless you're really dedicated to keeping up with it, which is probably why, their fan base is like so fanatical, because like you kind of have to be to stay on board with it almost.
Well, keep in mind,
I mean, I guess I would consider myself like still part of their fan base, but I don't keep up with the show right now anyway. Haven't for a while.
Well, keep in mind, if you have friends, it's also easier if you have friend groups that are into it. Like
yeah,
a good example is, I don't know, I mean, how many times would you one of my good friends loves, before Rick and Morty blew up and became like everyone's favorite show, like my friends and I would always talk about Rick and Morty right after it was on, like in season 2 or something. We're like, oh my God, you didn't see that because it was so amazing. And it helps when you have other friends. And I have one friend who watches Critical Role, but that's it. But if suddenly I guarantee Pierre Pressure will show up and say, oh, you were not watching Critical Role? Oh, your friends are watching it. Would you like to watch it? And I'd be like, okay, Mr. Pierre Pressure, I will watch Critical Role as well.
It's a lot of hours, and for me, I feel like I like things that are more condensed and where I'm getting all the beats quickly. And it's just it's a pacing thing for me. Like the quality is definitely there. And so also, just like Steven, Legend of Vox Machina, I thought I definitely liked
I loved
what was going on with that.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was very, very well done. And now you could see, because if they're doing those voices, I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. This is great. I love this. Like, just do this. Just keep coming out with more of these.
It's funny too, in a way, because it's like, of course, that's their element, actually. Like they are professional voice actors. So of course, like doing the show should come across as like better in a way, because like that's what they're actually all experts in for decades and decades between them, So
what's your show of choice? Or you just watch everything, don't you, Bob? You just watch everything.
I mean, I skim around. Like I said, I actually haven't watched any Critical Role for a long time. But I did watch a lot of, I guess, the one season of Dimension 20, like the first one that's like the Fantasy High. My wife and I watched a lot of that during COVID. And then she actually kept up with at least 2 or 3 of their other campaigns. But the thing is, most of their stuff is on their own streaming service. So, and we never bought into that for whatever reason. So we aren't able to keep up with the new stuff. But yeah, I just found it to be much more digestible, to use that word again, than Critical Role, because the episodes are all an hour, maybe an hour and a half. So it's as long as a movie. Okay. Or a short movie today. and they're really like they're just edited well with like multi-camera setup. You're seeing the board in a lot of cases as well. They have like cool miniatures and stuff, so it's just like pieced together in a easier to watch way for me. But yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, you seem to be very excited about Daggerheart. Well, what else are you playing? So I apologize. I got so busy this summer. I still want to do DCC. I know we started it up and then we never did it, but I have them. I have my books right here. I got them right here. I got all my DCC books right here, like ready to go. I just have to. Well, you know what happened? The summer gets crazy, but now
it did really. It got away from me.
You too. You were. I'm not the only one to blame because you were very busy too. So,
yeah.
But I will say something fun is that after going to Gen Con and meeting every streamer known to mankind, I have endless people to play these games with if we want. So, like, if we want to get together a fun game, I could get everyone on it. Baron, Professor would join us. Everyone, like, we can get Mark. Everyone, it would be a great game.
Yeah, we can do it. Steven, I'm always up to run one of these games if we want to do that.
No, that's true. We could have you run it. I don't have to learn the rules. Why is my dog crying?
I can run a variety of different games that if you want to play them at any time. It looks like we also had a super chat from Eric S. Riley on the topic of investment into Critical Role that says, I would compare actual plays to soap operas in terms of time and plot investment.
Yeah, there's a reason why soap operas have died off. I guess it's too much, you know? And also, there was no competition for soap operas back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's something to be said there, though, because like earlier, Steven, you said how it helps when you have a group of friends watching, and that's totally true. But I also feel like with Critical Role, I think you mentioned that, like, because there's peer pressure.
Yeah, peer pressure.
But I also think there's something like I imagine. So I don't know how true this is, of course, but that like a big chunk of Critical Role's audience, because this has been said for years, is that it's people who probably aren't in a regular D&D group of their own. And it's like, that's how they're getting their D&D fix, is watching this show. And if you are playing a D&D game every week, that's like 3 or 4 plus hours of your own time, you probably don't have time to keep up, or it's like a lot harder to keep up with a 3 or 4 hour show that comes out every week too. So yeah, I feel like there's something there.
So by the way, Shadow of the Mask is asking, soap operas, have they died off? Okay, they still are around and they're still a thing, but let me tell you, when I was a kid, I was going to high school in the 80s. They were talking about like General Hospital in my high school. Okay, like people like, and they're like teenagers were talking about soap operas. Okay, how many teenagers are talking about All My Children right now, or General Hospital, or any of these? I don't think it's very popular topic in your high school, but back then it was big. Like, they were really big, these soap operas. Of course, we only had 13 channels back then, so there wasn't much else to watch. It wasn't like we have today, which is you can literally spend every second of your life watching TV, and you would never, ever, ever even scratch 1/1000% of everything out there. Back then, when we used to say there's nothing on TV, there would literally be nothing on TV. Like, nothing. Like, like some of the channels would be static, and the other ones would be infomercials. And that's it. And if that's all you had, thank God you had a VHS player, because then at least you can rent a movie. So, a little different back then as opposed to now. Anyhow, but I see people, oh man, the soap operas. Whoa, we hit a nerve. People are going crazy about the soap operas. What do we do here? I know soap operas were such a popular topic. Oh my God. You know, my wife's first job was working at Soap Opera Digest. You know what that is? Does anyone even know what I'm talking about? It's a weekly magazine on the soap operas, so you can keep up. How about that? Digest form magazine, like TV Guide. Does anyone know what TV Guide is? I'm really old. TV Guide was this book you used to get in the mail once a week that had listings of all the TV shows. And that's how you figured out what you're going to watch on TV, by going through the book. The most popular magazine in the world, TV Guide. Number 2 is Reader's Digest. Wow. Yeah. It was.
There you go.
I don't think it is anymore, but isn't that crazy? Number one in the entire world by a mile.
Definitely not anymore.
I mean, it makes
every
sense
just
since
has a
it
menu.
had like a use case that people were using it for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Dallas was made into a role-playing game. Not only does Dallas made into a role-playing game, but Professor Dungeon Master said he'd run it for us. Because he has it. He owns it. Can you imagine? Maybe we'll do that at PAX Unplugged. We'll have Professor run Dallas for us. Do you even know what Dallas is, for Bob?
I think I've only heard him talk about it at some point. It's not one that I'm even familiar with at all.
Look
like
up.
the other one you mentioned, General Hospital.
Do you know
I've at least heard of.
Do you know
who shot? I've heard of,
who shot JR? Do you know anything about that?
That's the only thing I know about Dallas is that Who Shot JR is like the big thing that happened.
Oh, I mean, that would
and then
make
like
sense.
was it like a dream or something like that? And then they like retconned it.
Yes. So this is the beginning of the world.
I don't even know what the premise of Dallas is. I assume it takes place in Dallas. But
It's
Who
about
Shot JR
it's
and it
stupid.
being a dream are so famous that I only know that.
No. It wasn't a dream. It was what happened is that what they did is they had this like JR got shot, and then it was like, and I think it was like over breaks. So that's all
Christian
people.
Ice said Bobby dreamt it all.
Right. What happened is Bobby, right, and people, but it was a retcon because I think Bobby was killed, and people loved Bobby, and people went nuts. So then they dreamt it was a dream, and he was in the shower, and he wasn't really killed. But it was like the beginning of all this stuff of like meta, the beginning of meta and retconning and like people paying attention to popular culture. It was really right around this time. Okay, Car 54, where are you? That's too old even for me, okay? Okay, I never even saw that show. But Dragnet, one of the most popular shows of all time. I gotta let my dogs in because they're breaking down my door.
Oh man, well now Steven left us with this topic that we don't know anything about.
Nobody knows anything about this topic. What do you want? What do you want? I'm like a media. I love media. What do you want? I'm like, this is like, but you watch TV. You watch stuff. I can't be the only one who watches.
I mean, I grew up.
Watches
with TV,
1970s series.
Well, Car 54, right? Nick at Night. You guys ever watch Nick at Night? Come on, Nick at Night was great.
I watched Nick at Night as a kid. Car 54 was not one of the things that was on it when I watched Nick at Night. There was like Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie and I Love Lucy. Those were the ones that were usually on there at Nick at Night.
Oh, Who Shot Mr. Burns? Is that more your speed? Because that's The Simpsons.
Doesn't even ring a bell.
Oh my God, Bob, you're so young.
93 is when I was born.
You were born in 93? Oh my God! I graduated.
Years old. That's not.
I graduated college in '93. Like that. That makes me feel. That makes. I think it may even make Mark feel old. Though Mark's not.
Yeah, I'm older than that.
But... Yeah, he's a little older than that. A little older. So, what did you grow up with? What were the shows you used to watch, Mr. 93?
Oh my God! I mean, I don't know, cartoons. Like I was watching all Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network.
Oh, really?
And I guess like Disney Channel and whatever. Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, I don't think I want like trying to. I mean, I guess also growing up, there was like House was like big at the time.
Oh, yeah.
The Office was kind of like huge when I was in high school and like middle school, I guess.
Oh my God!
But I wasn't watching it in middle school then.
I love The Office.
But yeah, it was definitely like post-peak soap opera. So
it looks like shows that first aired in 1993 that were cartoons include Animaniacs.
Well, he was a baby.
Yeah, I mean, like back then, yeah, sure. Like,
yeah, I guess you were a baby though.
I remember it being like, well, actually, well, yeah. To be honest, probably like SpongeBob was just like the biggest thing.
Oh, that was big. That was huge.
School.
Yeah,
and that is like one of the biggest shows of all time now. Still, yeah. I don't know. We're really off the rails now.
There you go.
We're not off the rails. This is haven't you watched our show? Every show ends. That's when you know you're near the end of the show because we start talking about TV, films, or food.
Okay.
Or one of those three. Well,
I see. I see them in the comments though. These people are right. Angry Beavers was up there. Dexter's Lab was on Cartoon Network.
There you go.
Powerpuff Girls was on Cartoon Network. Yep. So a lot of cartoons. Yeah.
Disney's Gargoyles came out in 1994. That was a pretty good
True.
series. And the Year of Legends will have a Gargoyles ancestry
That's
for
right.
Battlezoo Ancestry's Year of Legends.
Year of Legends, we're going to have a gargoyle ancestry that's going to be very heavily influenced by that. And they're doing a new movie. They just announced they're doing a new gargoyle movie, which is amazing. Good timing for me. I was like, all right, well, there you go. I'm like, got a gargoyle and a gargoyle movie. What more do you want? Oh, someone asked what that Pokemon is on the screen, Mark, next to Bob.
Which one next to Bob? The little
The Fire Eldamon.
the Bakindle? It's a Bakindle.
Yes.
But it's a very shiny one. It's different than the normal coloration on a Bakindle. So a Bakindle is one of the Fire Eldamon that exist in Battlezoo Eldamon, which you can pre-order at battlezoo.com. Bakindle is the pet form of the Fire Elephant Eldamon, not the Fire Element Eldamon. And they're curiously sticking their trunk into different situations in order to learn new things, and they make use of a variety of mnemonics to remember various facts that seem important to them. Of course, like other Eldamon, the facts important to a Bakindle are almost never relevant to a mortal's adventures, but nonetheless, the ability to remember them in their own way is vital to Bakindle. They often use the beads of a necklace or the bands of an anklet to help recall what's most important to them, like the smile of a friend they hold dear.
So, Bob, did you used to play Pokemon?
Yes.
You're a Pokemon kid? So we have, a Battlezoo Eldamon, which is, kind of like Pokemon, more or less. And it's funny because I always wondered, why did no one ever make Pokemon class in 5e or Pathfinder? And what's the reason, Mark?
I've seen it homebrewed a couple times.
What?
There's a whole Pokemon D&D subreddit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we got to get on that.
I mean,
well, because
there are Stephen, people who during our Kickstarter for it,
I meant professionally. Sorry. Let me rephrase that. I meant professionally. Not
Right. Yeah, I guess that's a good question.
Yeah.
Why
so there have been some that like tried to do something where they're like, you can catch the monsters that are like in the game already, right? Where it's just like there's bestiaries you can catch and then send out those monsters that were generally like very light on text. But the reason why not that many people like made an entire new system with like a bunch of elements, all of which have new powers or moves and like over 160 creatures is because it takes a huge amount of effort, and you need to be confident. You need to be as confident as Steven and have enough capital in advance to be able to afford to do that. And most companies cannot.
Or it's the stupidest
very
idea.
challenging.
Reverse Baldur's Gate.
What?
where you'd be taking, I'd say it's a reverse Baldur's Gate, where you'd be taking this well-established video game system, that has all the types and the damage and the moves already all worked out, and then translating it into a tabletop game.
Well, we are doing that, but we're kind of reinventing it too, because it's not really Pokemon. And not only that, Mark decided to go for broke and also do an Airbender in there, an Avatar class. So we got two of the craziest classes of all time. Good job, Mark. Good thing you're writing. Good thing you're writing it, not me.
When you pitched this whole thing to me years ago, I was like, look, the thing that's going to be the longest, that's actually the most challenging, is getting the moves for the special powers for the Eldamon, all of these elements, all these abilities. Once you have those, then like it almost doesn't make any sense not to have multiple ways to use them. And so the elemental avatar has an Eldamon inside of them, and so they just use the same powers that normally an Eldamon would use.
You channel the Eldamon through you. So someone wanted to know where it's at, and you have good news because we're cruising.
I just finished the 10th of 10 of the starting elements, not counting the stretch goals, which means 120 of the 162 Eldamon are done. 10 of the elements are done. I have playtest feedback, and I'm about to iterate like a significant new update of everything at this point, because I've been just churning new stuff for the playtesters, but at this point there's enough feedback that some things should get adjusted in the file. So I'm going to do that, then go to the 3 stretch goal ones. So That's very exciting because once that's done, I can then move into the world lore and like tables of collecting and befriending Eldamon, and finish it out. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping to be done with the writing by the end of September. And other than other projects and things that will come across my plate, like for this current Kickstarter, that seems doable to me. But if not, it'll be very, very close to that.
Yeah, we're cranking.
And a lot of it is going to be done by then.
Yeah, we're cranking pretty fast on
Yep.
Eldamon. Well, plus
elements.
And elements. Well, because also I stopped giving Mark other things to do. But well, we had to finish this book up.
Yeah, it was the current Kickstarter kind of took time, and it's going to because there's still islands to do. But I think we can do this. We've got done. 10 elements. We've just got mind, light, and darkness, the stretch goals to go.
Yeah, but this thing is going to be a freaking beast when it's finally done. But we're cranking.
Ridiculously
we're
ambitious projects. Other than like creating Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which had a giant team on it, it's one of the most ambitious tabletop RPG projects that I've ever.
Well, I'm not doing that anymore. I've learned my lesson.
Steven, you're going to become less ambitious in the future than Jewel of the Indigo Isles and Eldamon.
Oh my God! Have you seen? Did I show this to you, Mark? I mean, sorry, this is Bob. Oh, this is the Jewel of the Indigo Isles book. This is the adventure path that
it's an adventure for level 1 to 10. You level up to 11 at the end, and it's that long because it has so much content and
give me an idea.
Guidance for GMs and all sorts of enrichment material.
This is the adventure, and this is the core rule book, and they are the same size. Wow. Yeah, big this adventures, and there's 2 of these. There's one for 5e and one for Pathfinder, and they're not the same. Each one's written specifically, and I designed the adventure and edited this entire book and did the layout and the art direction and everything. This killed me.
I did a big development pass.
He did the big development pass,
which was
this killed me.
It was a lot for both of us.
Oh yes, well this was my entire life. From September, for 6 months, and then for 6 months, I would spend every waking moment laying this thing out because it's 500,000 words. So it's like between the 2 books.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Yeah. Don't be this ambitious. I learned my lesson.
It's almost as long as War and Peace.
Oh, God. We can run that adventure for you. I am going to run it. Everyone asks me because there is an actual play that runs it now.
Yeah, 25 North. Yeah, and I'm running it for my home group.
Oh, we've right,
had one session so far.
Oh, okay. How many sessions?
Just one.
Oh, okay.
I had one, but then we haven't had the correct group of people together to do it again. Like in particular, there's one player who was thinking that he wasn't going to be available for a lot of the time, so he didn't sign up for it. But then he was available every week after the time that we ran it, and we didn't want to run the one that we just told him, take a hike. You're not in it. So we'll probably do another one sometime soon.
I'll tell you the funny thing, because everyone complains that the game's too easy, because they're like, oh my God, it starts off so easy. Because
every other adventure path, people complain that it's hard. And the reason why is because some groups, the dice roll differently, and if you make it like about a middle of the road challenge, some groups are going to get wrecked, and that's not good for new players if their experience is that they have a 10% chance or however much it is to get wrecked. So if you make the beginning of it so that it just legitimately is easy, then even if they get bad luck, it's just kind of challenging, and then some groups will just be like, this is a cakewalk.
Except then
that's a better situation,
right? But then see if you go to the Discord, you'll see everyone complaining when they get to level 3 and 4 how they
eventually
all dying.
Parts that are hard, and they're like, "This is hard now." It's like, it was intentionally extra easy at the beginning.
I'm like, wait, that's not even the hard part. You just keep waiting; it gets way harder. It gets way harder. So that's how you kill off your characters, Bob. You make it really easy in the beginning and make them lull themselves into a sense of, we can just kill everything easy, no problem. And then, woof, and then they die quickly. So, all right. So I think, do you have any final thoughts on Daggerheart? Sorry, my dog is going crazy.
I guess I want to reiterate what I said earlier, which is that it's not going to kill D&D.
Yeah.
Different audience that it's going for. It's more narrative than D&D. I think it will be successful thanks to Critical Role's reach in a way that does not really impact D&D very much.
Okay.
That's my thought.
What's Bob's thought? Because Bob seems really excited for it. I'm excited now. I'm excited because Bob's excited.
I think there might be more. I think there might be more overlap with like a 5e audience than maybe than Mark is thinking here, because I do think the level of crunch is similar enough to 5e that it can attract the same crowd if they're willing to trade their D20 for 2D12 and and put cards on their character sheet. And again, I also don't want to lay on the idea that like, oh, you have to switch to Daggerheart, because every time I talk about it, like make a video about a new RPG, people are like, but I love D&D, and well, it's like you don't have to only play one game. Like you can try others. And I know you guys did a whole stream on that already, actually, about a commitment to RPGs. But yeah, so basically, I do think Daggerheart will be successful. I do think it can reach a lot of the same fans as D&D 5e, just in the same way that Critical Role, is appealing to so many fans of 5e because they're building it to match like their brand. So I do think it can have a wide appeal. And I do think like maybe the one thing we haven't talked about, but I don't want to like dwell on now because we're wrapping up, is that it could be a great gateway for some people just into other RPGs, because it's like once you learn your second RPG, then it's super easy to learn any other one, I think. But
even once you learn your first one,
hurdle. Yeah, it
it's not
depends,
hard,
on
but people usually don't.
Yeah,
and you're not wrong about that.
Also, keep in mind, people are looking. I think Daggerheart will be one of many RPGs that come out next year, because now is the time. The next year is the time. And now and next year is the time to start coming out with new ones, because people are going to have an excuse. The OGL was an excuse to leave D&D, and going from D&D 5th edition to whatever it's going to turn into 6th edition is another excuse for people to leave, because there's always like it's a clean break. It's a time to now. You know what? Let's start something.
You can be like, I collected everything up to this point. Now I'm going to move on.
Yeah. But
I'm also trying to say you don't have to do that. You can support more than one game.
Oh yeah,
I think.
Look at my
in
shelf
fact, you
back
should.
here. I got everything.
If you can afford
Exactly.
to, I think you should support many different games, because you'll build up your skills, just like we said in that other episode.
Yeah.
Which means we have to play our DCC game one day, because I got to kill everyone.
Yep.
Not on purpose, Well, DCC, you're gonna die. It's like
so you're asking for that.
Oh, you're just dying. Like, in fact, that's part of the game. That's part of the game is that that's why you have 4 characters, because it's like if you're not losing a character, you're not doing it right. You gotta. In fact, that's like you starting off with 16 characters and see how many make it to the end. So, but
yeah, so we'll have to play that game, play that session, and then do some kind of recap stream with whoever else we play with.
Yeah, that's true. And I do want to try Daggerheart when it does come out. I mean, I'm very curious, and after seeing us talking about it, it's like either the 2D12 is either going to be genius or not. I don't know. I can't decide. It was so out of left field when they said they were doing that. I was like, what? So it definitely got my attention. So we'll see. I hope it works. So
I guess I wasn't very shocked by it, because a lot of systems use 2 of some die.
I was very shocked because their logo is a D20.
Okay, that's fair. The Critical Role logo does have D20. That's a very fair point. I was not thinking of their logo.
It's like, okay, what's your logo? D20. What are you going to make the system? D4. I'm like, what? No, that's wrong. It's like that's a
good point.
What's your logo?
Do you think they're okay? So Steven,
yes.
Do you think they're going to change their logo to have D12?
No, because 2D12s is not going to be. It's not a good look. 2D12s looks like a lot of things that are not wholesome. So no, they're not changing
I'll
it.
give you. Maybe one of my last comments will be this. Somebody commented on my video today about it, saying that the D12 has been like significant to Critical Role in weird ways, like throughout their history. Like I think it was campaign 2. Someone mentioned there was kind of this MacGuffin item that was a dodecahedron. I think is
Dodecahedron.
and it's even on the cover of their like Explorer's Guide to Wildmount D&D book. There's like a D12 like item. So it's been kind of this thing that's like seeded for a while, at least for people maybe who are like more closely following Critical Role. So to those, to that cohort, it could have easier to get into.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they will. Someone did point out they could just change it to a single D12. They could. Yeah, that is possible. That is possible. But the D20,
you could see that, right? They could have a Hope logo and a Fear logo where they color it differently depending on whether it's the Fear D12 or the Hope D12.
I'll put it this way: if they change their logo to a D12, they're going all in, and they're never going back, because that's going to be commitment, because that logo is.
That's a Rubicon.
A
Rubik's Cube.
That's a Rubicon. Rubik's Cube. No one will get any of those jokes, but I got them because I'm insane. But
I got that one more than I got the soap opera stuff.
Oh, well, there you go. It was soap opera stuff. That was popular topic. People flying.
It really was.
I guarantee I'm gonna have Professor Dungeon Master run Dallas for us, and then you'll find out who shot JR. There you go.
Was it you, Steven?
No, it'll be Bob. It'll be Bob. No, actually, it will be me.
I think it was you. You're the kind of person who would have shot JR.
I know.
100%.
Well, in that game of Mothership, I became the ooze that infected everyone and killed them.
Yeah,
but then Professor Dungeon Master found the self-destruct button and blew us all up.
Well, he did the right thing based on what you were doing.
Well, I got away.
Oh, well, then he didn't do the right thing.
Because Ben from Questing Beast, he saw it all coming a mile away, so he got an escape pod and left. And he's like, "You're all dead." And then we had the epilogue of me killing him and then piloting a ship to Earth. And then the whole time he goes, "That was a good epilogue, but how on earth did you get on my ship? I left a long time ago." He did not enjoy that, but whatever. That's why you play role-playing games, because the craziness of the gaming. Anyhow.
There you go.
So where are you, Bob? What are you up to? Where can people find you? What new videos do you have coming out?
Mostly on YouTube here. Bob World Builder. And outside of that, if you want to support what I do, Patreon by the same name. And I am still on Twitter for whatever reason, but I don't post a lot there. So mostly just YouTube.
Oh my God. Professor Dungeon Master just super chatted $20.
I see it, yeah.
Not the first time I've blown up the entire party. You see, Mark, I think Professor and I in the same game is just like, it's chaos.
No, but I support his blowing everyone up because you had infected everyone. He was trying to save people. You were trying to kill everyone or take over by infecting.
It's true. I am. But you know what? I'm a troublemaker. What do you want? I am the worst player. That's why I don't play games. I only DM, because if I'm a player, everyone always complains. I'm that guy. I'm that guy who just makes trouble for everyone. Whatever. That's fun. And Mark, what are you doing?
What am I doing? Where can you find me?
Oh wait, you don't have your stream tonight. That's right. It's
no, I had it yesterday. Yeah, but you can find me on Arcade Mark channel of Twitch, or here, or on the Discord for Roll for Combat, or the Arcade Mark Discord. And I am working on Eldamon and various other Roll for Combat products. And I'm also I'm trying to get us prepared for Year of Legends, which we announced alongside this Kickstarter. There was that graphic that had the evil eye, that was the playable eye creature, the cerebrophage that eat your brains, and the gargoyle.
Oh, by the way, you don't even know this, but on Friday we might be doing a secret stream, and you know who's going to be the guest?
Oh,
Kelsey Dion from Shadow Dark. She is. Oh, you got one too. She's gonna join us and talk about Shadow Dark. You know, the
That's
awesome.
Kickstarter that only made $1.6 million. So
That's exciting. I like talking about different games.
yeah. So she.
I vaguely knew that there was going to be probably streams, but I did not. You're right. I did not know that was the topic.
Yeah, and we'll talk all about Shadow Dark. You got one too, huh, Bob?
Yeah, Mark, you got to get one.
She only has like 20
one.
left. She has very few left. This is what's this called? The Shadow Bat or something? I forgot the name of it.
Oh wait, show me your sticker. No, yeah, so that's the 10-eyed oracle.
Oh, 10-eyed oracle.
Stingbat is the other creature.
Yeah, Stingbat.
Yeah,
we're talking about Stingbat, which is, by the way, just a sturge, but she calls it a Stingbat. That's like the official logo.
It's like Bloodseeker in Pathfinder.
Yes, exactly. It's the same creature. Everyone just renames it because, you know, OGL. But yeah, no, we're gonna have her on, and and maybe she'll run a game for us. She said she'd run Shadowrun for us. That would be fun. See, try to get as many games run by the people who design the game. That's what's always fun. Like Mark. Mark can run Pathfinder. I don't think Mark's ever... Oh, you ran one game of Pathfinder for me.
Yeah, I did. I ran the Rum Plank pub crawl that was a prequel to Jewel of the Indigo Isles.
And what was I in that? Was I a pain?
You were Flint.
I was a pain. That's what I was. I was a total pain in that. Even Mark's like, I started to cause shenanigans and he had none of that and started to make me make rolls. And I'm like, no, let me do my shenanigans. Don't make me make rolls.
I mean, you have to make a
and
roll
then
to
fail the rolls. You're making me
well, you rolled a 2.
Well, you just let me do it. Let me do what I do. It's more fun that way. Otherwise, it just stopped. And then I actually became a good boy at the rest of that game. That was, I think, the first time I ever got spanked for being crazy in one of those games. Oh well, learned our lesson.
I was gonna let you succeed, except for that you rolled really low.
Yeah, well, what do you want?
If you had made it, then you would have made it.
All right, Bob. Well, thank you for joining us and staying for so long. And it sounds like we got some cons we might be going to, at the bare minimum. That PAX Unplugged. And maybe this Pittsburgh con. I got to check this one out.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh one I'm certainly going to be at. PAX Unplugged. I got to buy my tickets, but I'll probably do it later this week.
Yeah, I would definitely do an episode about miniatures and terrain during a D&D session. That sounds like a Bob thing, not me.
That sounds like a Dungeon Craft thing.
That's a Dungeon Craft thing.
Probably.
Yeah, it's Dungeon Craft. Yeah. He is Mr. Terrain and Mr. Minis. I have one. I have the one that I built, and it's a Space Marine. It's not even fantasy. It's the wrong one. So, all right. Well, check it out. There'll be some posts about Friday. If just have to arrange for Kelsey to come on the show, and do check out our Kickstarter, and you can check out Bob's. Check that out. Look, chickens everywhere. Ferocious in a swarm. Safe to capture alone. Disgusting but edible. That is the chickens in a nutshell.
That's right.
That's right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.